Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. доводи, всяке озброєння, різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 450 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And Ukraine is getting F-16 fighter jets.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. It is unbelievable from start to finish. Not only have the Ukrainians continued to get behind the Russian lines and outflank Russian forces in the city of Bakhmut, we've also seen that more Storm Shadow missiles have been used, and the Ukrainians are getting F-16s. It is an amazing day of war news. And of course, we're going to be starting off with some pretty hot stuff, actually. It's the juice. It's literal juice. And we're going to be working our way up into the battlefield of Bakhmut, where once again the Ukrainians have made a massive advance. And so, starting off in the city of Mariupol, we saw proof that Storm Shadow missiles have been used again. Already, just about a week after the first missile was used in the city of Luhansk, we now have proof that the Ukrainians have also used a Storm Shadow missile in attacking a Russian base within the city of Mariupol. And so starting off with our first video, we could see some explosions in the distance as air defense continues to try and shoot down the incoming missiles. So, let's get the clip, and here we go. So let me unmute it, and here it is. We can see the first explosion already occurring in the distance, and a second one. It appears that 2 missiles hit this military base that the Russians have set up inside of Mariupol. And we can see the pillar of smoke rising into the sky. And while air defenses were reported to be active, and we do have proof later on that they were, it appears that it was wholly ineffective in stopping these missiles. It appears that if they were Storm Shadows, or the slight chance that they were not a Storm Shadow, they were able to clear their way through the air defense without any large problems. Moving on into our next bit of news inside the city of Mariupol, we saw the air defenses, or at least proof that they were used, just about hours later during the daylight, right here. And we can see some kind of air defense had been used, but once again, from what we know, it was completely unsuccessful, and the base was stricken twice by Ukrainian missiles. We're now going to be moving on into our next clip, where we saw a 2-second video, probably the shortest video we've ever shown on stream, but it shows the explosions of the 2 missiles from inside of one of those newly constructed, like, apartment block residence areas in Mariupol, and it appears that this may have been a Russian that was moved into the area, and he's watching the military base explode just a few blocks away from this apartment area. We can see the flashes of the 2 explosions right there, and that's the end of that clip as well. And so moving on into our last one in Mariupol, we saw really the first clip I saw of the day showing that Mariupol was under attack. And this was even way later in the daytime, once again showing the, I guess you could say, the trails of the missiles that failed to intercept the Storm Shadows, or even later on the day when other missiles may have been sent to the area, although we didn't hear about other missile strikes occurring in broad daylight. We only heard about them occurring at night. Nonetheless, this is the second recorded time that the Ukrainians have attacked a city outside of every other weapon system's range except for the Storm Shadow. There's only one other kind of weapon that could have conducted this attack if it was not a Storm Shadow, which is a Krem or a Grom missile. Those are domestically made short-range ballistic missiles, much like the Kinzhal. They're actually inspired heavily, they take a lot of their design from an Iskander. However, we've never seen those used rather than about once or twice, and the numbers that the Ukrainians have, from what we've been told and what we know, are incredibly low. They're less than 10 in number. And so the chances of those being used, at least for both of these attacks, and also we were able to confirm in Luhansk it was the Storm Shadow, the chances of a Hram or a Grim being used in this Mariupol attack is next to unlikely. It most certainly was a Storm Shadow missile, once again, that was able to strike this area of the city. According to the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, it also housed about 150 Russian soldiers and was a critical part of the Russian ground forces' air defense in that area of the country. And so it may have been heavily damaged. We're not really sure. We're going to be waiting for some more information, or for the war to unfold to tell how much damage was really caused to the installation. But it is great to see that the Ukrainians have been using Storm Shadows to great effect and wiping out Russian air installations and headquarters wherever they can. We're now going to be moving into Russia for just a quick second, because there was one little thing in Russia today that I thought was really important to show. And once again, it's more so proof to back up the casualty loss numbers that we see during the location unknowns. And this is a cemetery in Krasnodar. And we saw a large amount of flags flying over the cemetery. Can't play the music because it's copyrighted. But we can see flags of the Russian Federation. We can also see some GRU and Spetsnaz flags flying over the cemetery, as well as Wagner flags as well, and some VDV flags. So we can see that this is a, I guess you could say, mixed soldier cemetery. They are allowing really any branch of the armed forces, and it isn't specifically Wagner or Russian armed forces. It is pretty much a cemetery for any Russian soldier or fighter that has died so far in the war. And another interesting thing to note, and this is really bizarre, some of y'all may see this blue cross flag down here, and that is the flag of the Russian Navy. Now, rather than the Moskva, which sank, and we believe all the hands that died on board went down with the ship, so we know that their bodies have not been recovered, it is a good question, where in the world is this flag, what in the world is this flag supposed to be for? And the only thing I could take a guess at is that it was Russian naval infantry that most likely was buried there, and so the flag was put over the grave. And we can see a Wagner flag right here. And that's the end of the clip, but once again showing that Russian losses continue to be high, and we can see even here in Krasnodar, they're inflicting a decent amount of losses on really everyone. We can see anything from Russian naval infantry to the Spetsnaz to the VDV, which are two of Russia's most elite units, and all the way down just to the average Russian conscript. The Ukrainians have been inflicting massive losses on the Russians, and it appears that they're not doing all too well if that one cemetery is something to go by. We're now going to be moving up into our location unknowns a little early, but I have to say, today is a special day. Y'all may notice that one of the markers from the location unknowns has been moved out of the location unknowns and is kind of on its own near the point of invincibility in Okturka. The reason why this one's on its own is people may come back weeks later, months later, even after the war is over. People may even be clicking on this map tonight, which the link is in the description below if you want to. And I wanted to separate this one because this is news from the BBC that F-16s will be sent to Ukraine. The U.S. will support providing F-16s to the Ukrainians. And to really quickly read this article, to give you all a little bit of an idea of what the actual details are, at least at this moment, the U.S. says it will support providing advanced fighter jets, including U.S.-made F-16s to Ukraine, and also back training Ukrainian pilots to fly them. We already know that the Ukrainians have been trained on the F-16 here in the United States, and so this appears to even be more expansive, and will be providing training for even more Ukrainian soldiers to learn how to fly these jets. A senior White House official said that the President of the United States had told G7 leaders in Japan of the decision. President Zelensky, who has requested fighter jets for months, said the decision would greatly enhance our army in the sky. U.S. approval for the scheme means other nations can export their F-16s. And that is an interesting note. That is exactly what we said was going to happen last night. I said we're probably not going to send them ourselves. We'll probably back up the Dutch or the Polish sending their F-16s to Ukraine, and other countries that may have F-16s. Norway is also one of them. Moving on from that, this is because the U.S. legally has to approve the re-export of equipment purchased by allies. The U.S. would, quote-unquote, support a joint effort with our allies and partners to train Ukrainian pilots on fourth-generation fighter aircraft, including F-16s, to further strengthen and improve capabilities of the Ukrainian Air Force. And this is a very interesting bit of wordage as well, according to this direct quote. Fourth-generation fighter aircraft, including the F-16. So there are unknown variants of aircraft that they will also be trained on and may also be sent that we're not specifically hearing about right now. All we're hearing about is the F-16. They could also possibly be getting trained on Mirage 2000s, Eurofighter Typhoons, maybe even, well, most likely, it's quite unlikely that it's a Gripen, because a Gripen is a Swedish aircraft and they're not a part of NATO yet. But there is a very, very small possibility that the Gripen could also be on the list, along with anything else, maybe even Tornadoes, if any country still has those in service. And so as the training takes place over the coming months, our coalition of countries participating in this effort will decide when to actually provide jets, how many we will provide, and who will provide them. And so pretty much to
Maybe they're
sum,
looking at providing maybe F-18s or maybe a better jet than the F-16.
they may be, and that's probably one of the craziest things we've heard of the war, is that the United States is now giving its approval, and largely this approval isn't just about F-16s and American aircraft. This approval opens up the floodgates, it seems, for every country within the Western world or every country within NATO to send any aircraft they would want to send as well. And so it is not just the F-16 that could be sent. They could also get, just as a small list of fourth generation aircraft, F-15s. They could get possibly A-10s, which is also a fourth generation aircraft. They could get Eurofighter Typhoons. They could get Mirage 2000s, Cs, which are the multi-role version. They could get the Mirage 2000D, which is the more so bomber version of the Mirage 2000. They could also be getting Eurofighter Typhoons either from Germany or the United Kingdom or Italy. They could also be getting any Spanish aircraft. I believe the Spanish still operate the Tornado as well as the Italians. And those are also in, I guess you could say, the list as well. They could be getting F-18s. They could be getting practically anything because they said it includes F-16s, but the list is expansive. Pretty much, if you can imagine an aircraft in the Western world that is a fourth generation build, that could possibly be something that Ukrainian pilots are now trained on and then sent to Ukraine. I saw someone say an F-35. Sadly not. That's a fifth generation aircraft, and that technology is still most likely of Western, I guess you could say international security, considering that the F-35 has been bought by practically everyone in the Western world. So we probably won't see the F-35s being sent because it is a fifth generation. But it is amazing to know that really any fourth generation aircraft we can imagine can be sent over there to Ukraine. Hopefully,
I wonder if it would be better if they sent more F-16s, a larger quantity, or would it be better to send fewer but send F-18s instead?
I don't know. That's a good question. The F-16 and the F-18 can carry the exact kind of weapons. It's really more so about the durability of the aircraft when it comes to the decision between an F-16 and an F-18. Also, the maneuverability and things like that are different, of course. But I guess more so on the logistics side of things, it'd be more so what would be more practical for the Ukrainians to operate. Some people say that the F-18 is a lot more maintenance, I guess you could say, focused, than an F-16. F-16s, at least from what we've been told, require a little less maintenance than the F-18. So on a maintenance side of things, it would probably be easier for Ukraine to implement F-16s. However, the F-18 is more durable, and while it does require more maintenance, it would also be able to operate, at least from the supposed shortcomings of Ukrainian airfields, from rougher and shorter airfields. So it is a possibility that they could really get either. It's just more so who is happy to send what to them and what are the Ukrainians happy to receive. And so with that, amazing news and really unbelievable, especially at this point in the war, because we've been asking for months. Everyone in the world has been asking for months for the West to finally provide fighter jets, modern Western fighter jets, and that decision was finally made today. And the Russians have fallen completely silent. We haven't heard a single thing from them in response to this decision, at least yet. And it appears that once again, another red line's been crossed, and the Russians are doing nothing in response. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on down into our location unknowns. And starting off, we saw that the Freedom of Russia Legion's commander is thanking the partisans within Russia for doing their part in the war effort. And so with that, here's the clip. I have the honor. Lately, there have been a number of incidents involving direct actions committed by partisans and other concerned citizens fighting the Putin regime. Not so long ago, a military train was derailed in the Mariupol region, and in the Kazan region they burned 4 railway traffic control cabinets at once. We thank all the concerned citizens fighting the Putin regime, and we call on all those who have not yet done so to join them. Keep hanging on, we're close. I have the honor. And so with that, that's the end of the clip, but very interesting to see that the Freedom of Russia Legion is openly thanking the partisans for doing their part behind the lines, and we usually see that partisans are a bit of an unsung group in this war. While we always show what they do, and, a lot of people don't really know, get the importance of what they're doing, while it seems indirect and it's only stopping a train or rerouting an entire train network to another location, that kind of stuff really hampers a lot of what the Russians are able to do in this war. And everyone always has to remember that the Russian army runs entirely on the railroads. They're not like modern armies, where modern armies operate off of aircraft supplies and then truck supplies from there. They operate entirely off of a railroad supply structure, and then that railroad supply structure, wherever it can't get within 50 miles of the front lines, trucks then take the cargo the rest of the way. They're not a modern army supply-wise whatsoever. And so the partisans doing what they do, it's unbelievably impressive. It's unbelievably important, especially to the war effort, making sure that the Russians are not able to supply themselves like they would want to. Also, another thing, kind of to explain how that works with the burning of railway cabinets and why it was so important that even the Freedom of Russia's Legion's commander thanked them for doing that. Let's say you have two railroads leaving Moscow. One goes to the direct left of the screen and one goes straight down. And so there's 5 trains traveling on each network each day. So there's 10 trains in total, but 5 on each. One going to the left side, the left side of the screen, one going to the bottom of the screen. So to be able to operate these railroads, you have to have signal boxes, and these operate as red lights on a street, and they tell you when you can go and when you can't go. And without those in operation, it is completely impossible to operate those railroads, because unlike cars, trains can't really stop, or at least stop at a very short distance. And so if a signal is not functioning, they could collide into another train, cause tens of millions of dollars of damage, and also destroy a whole bunch of cargo. Also get railroad engineers killed, which is not good for the Russians whatsoever. And so if the partisans say burn the signal boxes that operate this entire southern direction railroad track, those 5 trains have to get to Ukraine the other way, the only other way, which is to the left of the screen, over here towards Gagarin. And so they have to take all 10 trains, and instead of splitting up to going to the left into the bottom of the screen, they're all going to the left. And that means that scheduling is way off. There's a backlog of trains. All 10 of them can't operate on that railroad at the same time. Maybe they can throw in another one and make it 6 trains a day, but 4 of them aren't going anywhere, either until those railroad signal boxes get replaced heading down to the bottom of the screen, or until they're able to make room for them to move to the left side of the screen. That's why the partisan activity in burning down those railroad boxes is important, because they are bottlenecking Russian supplies before they even get close to the front lines at all. And this is certainly going to help Ukraine in the long run, little by little, to put them at a upper hand advantage over the Russians at every part of the front, even like they are right now, and even in a better condition later on. And so with that, we're going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into the next bit, where we saw a Mr. S pull a Bugs Bunny like Looney Tunes deal, where its barrel exploded and the Russians just abandoned it. The Ukrainians came by and took a picture of it, and the barrel literally just split open.
Where's the Acme sticker at? It's got to be on the back of it.
Dude, it's got to be somewhere, man. You know, this is that cheap Russian steel. You know, like someone said, Vadim, we need like, I don't know, a lot of steel, blitz. And someone went, oh, okay. And then they made like cheap sand iron. It's like half sand, half steel. And this stuff just exploded and they fired it. I love this, honestly. This is hilarious. And interestingly enough, they just abandoned the vehicle, it appears, because the Ukrainians have now captured this thing with this ruptured barrel like that. I don't know if they will be able to replace the barrel. I don't know if the Ukrainians either have the kind of barrels that would be needed for a Mr. S artillery piece, but it's hilarious to see that the thing literally just split wide open. And so with that, we're going to be moving on into our next bit of location unknown news, where we can see a Ukrainian unit using their BMPs to cross the water. And also have to mute the music. But we can see it going straight down into what appears to be a lake. And there they go. And the water is almost coming right up into the hatches, which is always scary about these APCs. They hardly are above water at all.
Something about these things doesn't seem like they should be able to float.
None of the vehicles that are amphibious never seem like they should be able to float. Like, even M113s do this, and it's like, that just doesn't look right, you know?
Yeah, massive, heavy armor in the water seems like a recipe for disaster, but somehow it works.
Interestingly enough, though, it doesn't always work every single time. There's been a decent amount of instances where, for some reason, this little plate up here at the front, and this is a very important part of every single waterfaring APC, is that they have this little plate that flips forward, and you can see it right there. If they went into the water and that little plate wasn't up, what would happen is that instead of flinging the water around, the water would just flow up the front glacis and right into the hatches where the crew is, and then it would sink the APC. And so if that little flap fails, when they start going into the water, the APC is gone. It's going to roll into the lake, it's going to sink to the bottom, it's going to get filled with water, and that's it. And good luck to the crew if they can even escape. So it is really kind of scary to look at this stuff, and these have failed a good bit. Even some American LAVs have failed as well, and Amtrak's have failed in recent years, like in training exercises near San Diego, where those little front flaps just flip down and they fail, and then the APC starts to fill with water and then begins to sink. So a very, very little precarious thing to have these APCs float, and it really all just relies on that one little tab up there being flipped forward. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that neat little clip and on into our next one, where we saw a Ukrainian howitzer crew enjoying the weather. And I have to say, I think they're enjoying it quite a good deal. When you see them here with what appears to be an L119, a 105mm gun, and some beach umbrellas. They also have little plastic chairs and everything. I mean, they're really living it up out here.
They really are.
Dude, the Russians fly a drone over, they go, "Is that an artillery piece?" "Nah, damn, that's just some guys enjoying the warm weather." "Oh, okay, I swear, man, it looks like an artillery piece." "Nah, it's like a water cooler or something, but I got vodka in the blade." And
a
then
big super soaker, bliat.
He's a big super soaker. It'd be soaking our pants with piss when the shell explodes near us. But
Oh, the water is red today. Oh, no.
Hey, this stuff isn't water, this is blood. But anyways, that's the end of the clip. And really cool to see that the Ukrainian howitzer crews are having a fun time with it. With that, we're going to be moving on to our next bit of Location Unknown news, where we saw a Ukrainian custom-built 82.8 kilogram quadcopter. To put that into perspective, 82 kilograms to pounds, it's a 180-pound drone, or about the weight of a normal male adult, 180 pounds or so. And so, here it is.
Damn, that's massive.
Man, they got the bricks. They got everything.
Pablo Escobar wants to know your location.
Dude, Escobar is like spinning in his grave right now. He's like, if only we knew about this stuff back in the day. But anyways, really cool to see that they have this massive behemoth of a drone. I don't even think this is a drone anymore. Like, you know, those little Mavic 3s. I don't even think that's within that category anymore. This is what they would call in the Second World War a heavy bomber, I think, because this is huge. As far as drones get, I think this is the biggest one we may have seen by weight. And so with that, that's the end of this little clip. Just absolutely bizarre, though. And with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news, which is really crazy to see, and on into the Russian casualty report. And the casualties have been somewhat significant today.
Oh, man, they're on a losing streak with the Bobcats. Has been won for 2 days in a row.
But we got Ender Slayer putting in a wooden Bobcat. Yeah, boy! And let's see, what else do we have? We got KJ throwing in some burning
Let's
Bobcat.
go.
We got Sean White up in here, boining Bobcat. Hey, we got Yogi Fella. Yeah! Let's see what else. Stefan, he put in a drone Bobcat. Oh, that's pretty cool. Pretty fancy.
No, that's actually the ride-along Bobcat. Like, you can stand on the back of it, I think.
Dude, honestly, man, that is
Or it might be a drone, and maybe so.
That is like the goofiest thing for a ride-along Bobcat. Why not just have his chair put on it? Anyways, moving on into the losses. The losses have been juicy today. Starting off with 660 Russian soldiers wiped out in the past 24 hours. This is getting well on up there, about 150 above the war's average, and of course, great to see. We also saw that 4 armored personnel carriers joined them today, becoming burning wrecks on the battlefield, and that is a little bit below average, actually. Usually the losses are around 12, but we'll let it slide for today. Only 4 destroyed, not that bad. We did see that 10 supply trucks were destroyed, which means that around 80 tons of supplies were destroyed outright before they could be supplied to Russian troops. Incredibly important. And the loss of supplies is greatly beneficial to the Ukrainian side, as the more the Russians starve, the less ammo the Russians have, the less they can do, the less they can fight, and once the Ukrainians come up against them, they usually begin to withdraw from the field because they're so demoralized that they don't even have anything to fight with. We also saw that 4 main battle tanks were destroyed. This is getting right up on the war's average of around 5 tanks a day, and great to see that they were able to get another 4 main battle tanks. We also saw that 12 artillery systems were destroyed today. It's not as high as the other day, where we saw around 32 artillery pieces destroyed, but this is certainly not anything to scoff at. 12 artillery pieces is around 3 entire artillery batteries by World War II scales, completely destroyed. And so it's great to see that another 3 artillery batteries have been destroyed, and that will certainly be helping the Ukrainians to stem the tide, considering that the artillery is really the only thing that's been giving the Russians a small fighting chance. We also saw that they were able to shoot down 10 drones of an unknown kind. They were also able to destroy another singular MLRS. They also destroyed the 21 cruise missiles that were flying over Kyiv that were shot down that we reported yesterday, and a single anti-aircraft warfare system, probably in the ballpark of around $15 million, and of course the 1 Bobcat skid steer. Things have not been going well for the Russians, and this casualty report is a little bit above average, right on average, and in only one instance below average in a significant way today in this war. It is so far a pretty good day, and once we move on down into the Bakhmut area, y'all will see that it's been a really good day for them, and honestly unbelievable day for the Ukrainians, because they've been able to take miles of ground, and they've been updating it on Deep State UA finally to show how big of a gain it has been. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the casualty report and on into the frontline news itself, starting up in the northeast and then moving our way all the way down into the Dnipro River reservoir just south of Zaporizhia. But before we get into all of this absolute juice, we've got to get to the polls. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so we have several polls to address for our first question segment, and real quick, I'm grabbing one thing from the live chat real fast, and there we go. And our very first poll says, U.S. officials state that Ukraine will get F-16s, but not before the counteroffensive starts, and what are your thoughts? 66% said great news, send them finally. 25% said better late than never, 3% said unsure, and 6% said that will be too late to be useful. And I would say better late than never. It would certainly be excellent if they could get them to use them during the counteroffensive, because that's going to be the big push that Ukraine is trying to make. But they will still need to make advances after it's over, and the F-16s will probably be the finishing touch of Ukraine's counteroffensive. So I'm with the 25%. But Enforcer, what say you?
And can you reread that poll prompt for me again real quick? Reread the line.
U.S. officials state that Ukraine will get F-16s, but not before the counteroffensive.
I would have to say better late than never. I would also have to say that as well, because I think they'll do fine without F-16s during this counteroffensive. And once again, we have to remember that while we're always providing more and more support to the Ukrainians, the Russians are getting worse and worse off as the war goes on. They're not getting in any better of a condition. If I had to try and explain it like with a graph, this is what the Ukrainians graph would look like, and of course we don't have like a graph chart or anything like that, but this is what the Ukrainians forest growth looks like right there, and then this is what the Russians forest growth looks like just about right here. And so at some point, the Ukrainians have most likely already surpassed the Russians in terms of their, I guess you could say, abilities or their force size in Ukraine. And so I don't think it's necessary for them to have it during this counteroffensive. I'd assume they're about right where the mouse cursor is right here at this point against the Russians. I don't think they would need the aircraft now, but they certainly would need them later, because it helped them to drive home their offensives to a much greater effect than they can right now. On top of that, the F-16 can actually use the AGM-88 HARM properly. Really, every 4th-gen Western aircraft can use the AGM-88 HARM anti-radiation missile. And that's certainly going to be helping out the Ukrainians to an unbelievable margin, because right now they've been blindly firing the AGM-88s into the horizon and hoping that they find a target. They've pretty much been fired on, go find something mode. And that doesn't really work as well as we know where something is go get it mode. We know where it is go get it mode is something that only Western aircraft can do. And so by having that ability, they'll be able to dissect Russian air defenses far better than anyone has been able to do before, and that'll allow them to grow their air superiority over Ukraine until it's completely uncontested, even over Russian-occupied territory. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. It's great for them to get it. It doesn't have to be right now. It'd be great if it was right now, but it can be a little bit later, and it most likely won't affect anything too much. And so with that, we are on to the next poll.
And our next poll says the U.S. stated that F-16s will most likely be provided via proxy instead of directly from the United States. And what are your thoughts? 51% said that's wise to avoid escalation, 9% said unsure, 21% said I don't see the purpose of this, and 19% said that's really weak and lame. And I'm going to fall within the 21%. I honestly do not see the purpose in it, because if it's already known that the U.S. has made the call to allow others to export them, or the U.S. is going to indirectly provide them, there's really no difference if we just simply gave them ourselves or let somebody else do it. The same intent is going to be expressed toward Russia, and, I don't really understand it personally. But Enforcer, what say you?
The reason why we're probably doing it by proxy is so that way we can kind of do two things in one. The Ukrainians will get their F-16s. It'll be more cost effective, and we can also make sure to upgrade NATO's aircraft as well. Because and I'm assuming that it would most likely be the Dutch and the Polish that will be providing their F-16s to Ukraine. When they start to provide them, they're obviously going to be replacing them because they still have a large bulk of their air forces that are trained on those F-16s and so could pick up a brand new one anytime in the future. The Polish and the Dutch, for that reason, will either be buying more modern F-16s from the United States, or they'll be getting F-35s to replace them, although that's, a very cost-ineffective thing, especially compared to the cost of an F-16. So that most likely is what we're trying to do, a 2-in-1 deal, where NATO countries can send their jets to Ukraine, Ukraine gets the jets, and then those NATO countries that sent the F-16s, they're getting more modern aircraft in replacement. Really, everyone can get a modern aircraft in replacement, as long as they use American aircraft already, so that may also include the Italians, although let's take a look at their Air Force, the Italian Air Force, and let's see if they do have any American jets still flying. So let's go down here. Let's see here. So they use the F-35 Lightning II and the Eurofighter Typhoon. They could send the Eurofighter, but they're not going to be getting replacement Eurofighters from the United States. They won't be able to buy them from us either. They will maybe not. Well, they're certainly not. I had to sit there and take a look at that again because I wasn't sure if I saw an F-35 or not. They're certainly not going to be sending F-35s. So that's a 5th generation aircraft, and they're only sending 4th generation ones. So they're not going to be getting that. So with that, I hope that does address that at least the best I can. That's probably the reason why we're trying to do it through proxy, is to upgrade them at the same time the Ukrainians get the jets. And so with that, we are on to the next poll.
All right, and our next poll says, would it be better to send a large number of F-16s or a smaller number of F-18s to Ukraine? It looks like 78% send a large number of F-16s, 11% said send a small number of F-18s, and 11% said unsure. And while I'm very happy that Ukraine is getting the jets, it's important they get the right one for their purpose. And if I recall properly, the F-16 has a pretty fragile landing gear setup, and the F-18 has a pretty robust one. So if Ukraine hasn't had the chance to revamp the runways yet, or at least repair them to be in good working order, it would probably be better if they got F-18s. But then again, if there's some expert in the chat, please correct me on that. Will the F-16 be rendered useless if it goes down a runway with holes in it? And we know that there's several damaged airstrips in Ukraine, and that might be where they're taking off from. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would say, really quickly, I have to try and mute this first. Here's the difference in between how an F-16 is landed versus an F-18. There's also a training reason why. Here's an F-16, and you can see that they gently touch it down onto the runway. Once again, the landing gear is fragile, and also F-16s usually operate on longer runways, and that is in direct comparison to the F-18 landing right here. Ryanair.
Damn.
We can see Ryanair in action right there. But that's the difference. It's also a difference in training. Navy pilots are trained to slam the airplane into the runway because usually, obviously, they're landing on aircraft carriers, a very short runway to land on, and they also have to make sure to catch the arrestor wire. So they have to land pretty hard on the deck. The F-16s, on the other hand, usually don't. And so the landing gear tolerances are very different in between an F-16 and an F-18 because it's never expected that an F-16 would land like an F-18. And it's never really expected that an F-18 would land as gently as an F-16. So It is important to get the right plane for the right kind of job, and I really think it comes down to Ukraine. What is the right plane for the right job? And when you're talking about holes, Matthew, are you talking about like craters in the runway, or are you just talking about little itty bits and pieces of tarmac missing that are like quarter
Oh,
sized?
definitely not craters. There's no aircraft could handle a crater, but I'm talking about just small like pit holes in the tarmac or some kind of defects in it that the F-16 with a fragile landing gear would probably have a much higher chance of being broken on.
I don't think any of the runways in Ukraine have that problem. I think it's actually and I'm trying to use limited knowledge on this because I've never really gotten a good explanation as to why some people are saying that the tarmac is just tough on its own. Some people are saying that the tarmacs that Ukrainian airfields are made out of, like for example the Hostomel airfield, are too tough for an F-16 to land on, but I don't really understand how that works, and I would love for someone to explain that to us if there is an actual explanation, because I don't really understand how there can be different kinds of hardness and softness to what is basically a concrete tarmac. Even still, if that is the case, then how come Western aircraft like Airbus and Boeing planes can land at the Boryspil International Airport as the same as Soviet-era airplanes can land there as well? Because if for some reasons former Soviet runways are just built to a far worse state, or to a far harder toughness, why can Western airplanes land on the Boryspil Airport? I wouldn't really know.
I think the concern you're trying to reference is the one that KG pointed out. He said, not to mention that the F-16s have their engine down low and they can pick up anything off the runway and into the engine. So if there's debris on the runway, rocks, gravel, anything like a pretty bad shape airstrip might have on it, the F-16 is basically going to suck that right into the engine and screw the whole plane up.
And also that is a little bit of a thing that's kind of funny in between F-16, well, Western aircraft and Soviet aircraft, is that Soviet aircraft were built to operate on runways like that. And thank you for sharing that with me, because now that actually does make sense. So let's say the tarmac is made to where it's not as cohesive as a normal one, and now this all makes sense. So thank you so much for sharing that. If a runway isn't as cohesive and little pieces of rocks and pebbles come out of the asphalt, the problem is, like he said, is that the F-16 has a very low-slung air intake, and I'll show y'all right here. So, this giant gaping hole down here at the bottom of the F-16 is the air intake, and if I can find a picture of it on a runway right here, you can see it's pretty low to the ground, maybe just 3 feet above the ground at best. It can suck in practically anything off of the runway, and so there are small pebbles, they fly into the engine chews them up, and it gets pretty damaged off of that. That is not a problem, however, with Soviet-era aircraft, and let me see if I can find a MiG-29 on a runway to show y'all why. You see, the Soviets had an idea, and largely they say it was a idea of readiness, so that way, if they needed to construct a makeshift, quick to build airfield, they could just do that, and there wouldn't be a problem. But they built these interesting little gills, and I'll see if I can find y'all a picture of these gills in action, right here, actually. These little things right here, the slats that look like they fold inwards from the top of the fuselage, those are actually gills that allow the plane to suck in air from above it instead of under it like an F-16 always will. And also to help with this, they have these red things that you can see right there. Well, actually, that's not the red thing we're looking for. One second, let me see if I can get one on the tarmac from the front. Man, it is really tough to find the right pictures when you need them. Where in the world are they? Dang. Okay, here we go. This is a Slovakian MiG-29, and you can actually see that the air intakes down here, unlike the F-16, have some kind of a door over them, and they're shut. The reason why is because, once again, you can see the gills are open right there. That is to stop it from sucking in foreign debris like rocks, dirt, dust, whatever may start screwing up the engine. It's not going to be sucking it in because the gills are open instead. That's something that F-16s and practically all Western aircraft do not have, because they're not expected to be operating on rugged runways. They're always going to be operating on a well-maintained, well-made runway. And so apparently that is the difference in between the F-16 and I guess you could say the MiG-29, are making it very difficult for an F-16 to be used in Ukraine. But if that is also the case, that means that really every Western aircraft, not just the F-16, is going to have a problem there. The F-18s also don't have any kind of gill system either. They directly intake air from under the aircraft. through their air intakes. While they're a little bit higher off the ground, I'm sure they'll still be sucking in foreign debris, considering that there's no real way to stop that, at least in any Western aircraft design. So that is apparently the issue in sending an F-16. There really wouldn't be any fix for that either, because unless if Ukraine wanted to go and repave every single runway in their country up to a NATO standard, which would be prohibitively expensive and take a prohibitively long amount of time, the war would probably be over before they even got done with that. There really is no way to avoid engine damage at a much faster rate to really any Western aircraft that would be used over there.
Even though the West will have to get this sorted out, this is a much better conversation to be having than simply trying to decide whether or not they get a fighter jet whatsoever. At least we're to the point now where we can actually start selecting a jet that's going to be the right purpose for Ukraine instead of just trying to basically argue to even get one.
And that is a good point. And now it begs the question, just in the U.S. Air Force, and we'll also go over to the U.S. Navy here in a minute, what aircraft do we really have that could be used in Ukraine? So let's go down here and
I will say to a comparable price, because the F-16 is a pretty affordable jet in the scheme of things. I'm not sure about the F-18. I don't know that cost on that jet.
So let's see. And also, just real quickly to say this, bad news, everyone. There wouldn't be an aircraft in the U.S. Air Force's inventory, and the fighters are the multi-role aircraft. So it says it's a fighter, but really every aircraft in the U.S. Air Force at this point can be as much as of a ground-pounding vehicle as they can be an air superiority fighter. And it appears that none of these would be able to operate in Ukraine, because the F-15, just like the F-16, has no gills. And I'll show you all that right here. No gills. So it can't operate on a crappy runway, because it's also going to be sucking in everything through the front intakes. And I'll try and show you all that of a picture on the ground. You can see it right here. They have in these red little panels. Those panels are just to make sure that crap just doesn't float into the engine while it's sitting on the tarmac. You can also see one on the F-16 down there. But those aren't normally there. It is just a giant hole that leads straight to the engine so that we can suck in its air. And so the F-15s also couldn't be sent because they'll have the same problem as the F-16 for the most part. So now, what does the U.S. Navy have?
Send them an F-16, like somebody said in the live chat, with a street sweeper.
You know what they could do is that they could enlist civilian volunteers to comb the runways every single day from the beginning to the end, kind of like the U.S. Air Force does, to check for foreign debris and have it removed every single day. That would be very labor-intensive, especially to do that at every airbase that would probably be operating a Western aircraft. But that probably would be the best way for them to make sure that the aircraft has at least a longer life than it would otherwise. That may be really the only way to do it. Because thinking about it, I think the U.S. Navy, and let me make sure, U.S. Navy, Air Force, U.S. Navy, oh, that's weird. I thought it was called the Air Arm. But anyways, the Naval Air Forces, this is what we want. And let's go down here, and what kind of aircraft do they operate? Okay, this just gives us the squadrons. We need the list of U.S. naval aircraft, and it appears that they only operate F-18 Super Hornets and a few F-35s. So those can't be used either, because once again, those don't have gills. So as far as the U.S. goes, there's nothing we could really send them that would be able to operate on a Ukrainian airfield easily without sucking in all kinds of nasty junk that would be screwing up the engine pretty quickly. So it would either be a high maintenance thing to maintain the airfield, or these engines would degrade very quickly.
While they're trying to figure out how to get the planes to Ukraine, they ought to be sending over some kind of like kits or equipment to help them repair the runway so they can be prepared when they finally get them.
Maybe so, but then again, if it's a problem with the tarmac, like, the tarmac, like a normal asphalt road, just kind of has rocks coming up out of it every once in a while, it wouldn't matter if they got rid of the potholes, because once aircraft use that airfield enough, more rocks would just be getting uprooted from the asphalt and just be sitting around ready to be sucked into an intake, and then have an engine go, and catch on fire. So, it's probably going to be a problem nonetheless, but still, that may be the reason why we've been so apprehensive about sending it. And that needs to be included in our budgeting costs. If we send those aircraft over, we already need to expect that they're going to be going through engines at a much faster rate. Even if they do everything they can to stop it, they're going to be going through their engines at a way faster rate than a normal Western country would, operating them on a Western airfield. And so with that, I hope we addressed that poll fairly well. That was a really in-depth poll answer right there. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we are all out of polls now, so we are moving on to our Super Chat questions. And our very first one goes to BC Skyman, the channel legend, who puts in a $100 donation. And thank you very much, BC, for that very generous support. And he says, how many pilots have been trained to fly the F-16s, and how many are they going to send? Hopefully Ukraine will receive nuclear weapons for security reasons, and Slav Ukraine.
And Slav Ukraine. And thank you so much for the massive amount of support, BC Skyman. And of course, helping this channel to keep on running. And to answer that question, I believe the number that I've been told is around 16 pilots. That's actually a really high number comparative to the size of the Ukrainian Air Force even before the war. But I've been told it's about 16 pilots that have been trained here in the U.S. on the F-16. Once again, I can't really confirm those numbers because those numbers have always been largely rumor, and it's just been, oh, I have a buddy who, you know, he works at such and such airbase, and there's like 4 Ukrainian pilots there, and then there was another 4 at another place, and another 4 at another, and so everyone kind of came up with a general number of around 16 of them. So I would assume that if they do get F-16s, they will have 16 pilots for those F-16s, and the other ones that Zelensky's asking for that would get up to the numbers in between the 40s and 50s, I'm guessing that more pilots would just have to be trained for those to be usable. And then even then, that means that it's out of the picture for those planes to be ready for the counteroffensive, because the Ukrainian government will know that training takes a long time, especially on fighter aircraft, even at an accelerated speed. And so they would never be ready for the counteroffensive. They most likely be ready by the later part of this year, towards the very late part of summer or the beginning of fall at the earliest. And also, hopefully Ukraine will receive nuclear weapons for security reasons. Yeah, I don't know about that.
That's a big ask. That's a big ask.
That's a big one right there. I would say maybe, honestly, I would say I wouldn't be a big fan of that, actually. I'm not really a big fan of any country having nuclear weapons. They'll stay around permanently, though, so I'm not going to live in a fantasy world where I just imagine they'll all disappear one day. They are here forever now. But I believe that the world should be working on reducing the number of countries that have nuclear weapons, and for the ones that still will have them, to reduce that number significantly, to the point that it's maybe in the hundreds at most. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the massive amount of support, BC Skyman, and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you, who have been old guards on this channel and absolute legends, have helped this channel to keep on running. I thank you so much for appreciating this channel and finding it worthwhile to support, because it means a lot to us. And so with that, thank you so much once again. Long live the Lee Spring Army! And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
All right, and our next one goes to none other than Duncan VR, who puts in a $40 super chat.
What?
And it's good to see you once again, Duncan, and thank you very much for the support.
Hey! He's
and
back.
of course, the animal noises are back too. He says, Bamuba, Private DVR, here, demoted from Corporal, Baba, Matthew, Ba, Woof, flew an A-10, Woof, Ba, and fired a toilet, Baba, into Pootler's office, Meow. Pootler crapped his pants. Actually, crapped his panties. Baba, and good flying Matt, yeehaw, and Baba.
And thank
Meow.
you so much for the support, Duncan VR. And he is back with the animal noises. I gotta tell you, it's a legend return, and it's great to hear the animal noises once more. I gotta thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR, Baba, Bamuba, and thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on running. You have been around for ages. You've been around since the start of this channel. And I got to thank you so much for always coming in here and supporting this channel and appreciating us enough to find it worthwhile to support. And also always throwing in the funny animal noise super chats, because they are, at this point, a staple. They have been a staple of this channel. And I've got to thank you so much for carrying on the tradition. And I also saw Duncan VR in the chat go, meow. And thank you so much once again. For
Oh my.
Oh my. But with that, thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running, Duncan VR. And thank you so much once again for being a channel icon. And so with that, we are on to the final question of this question segment, and then we're going to be getting right back into the frontline news.
All right, and this one goes to Brian's Thailand, who puts in a $30 super chat. And thank you very much for the support. And he says, you guys are doing a great job and well done from Thailand.
Hey, and thank you so much, Brian's Thailand, for the support. And that's really cool to hear that we actually have viewers from Thailand. We don't have a massive amount of viewers that come from largely non-English speaking countries, which is kind of sad, but also it is really cool whenever one shows up, because it's always like, oh my god, that's so cool. Like I think we've had, like I think you're our first one actually from Thailand that I know of. We've had a viewer from Japan. We've also had, I think, a few viewers from South Korea. Also some from India. We've also had some from Brazil. And I think South Africa, like a very small amount of them. France, Germany, Poland. We've also had some from Ukraine, and even a few that are probably watching right now all the way from Russia. We have a really wide amount of viewers here, and I gotta thank you so much for being a part of the Lee Spring Army's Thailand division, and thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on rolling, because that is really cool to know that we have viewers in Thailand. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're going to make sure to keep this thing running, and thank you so much once again for appreciating this channel and finding it worthwhile supporting. And so with that, we're now going to be moving back into the news. And in the northeastern front, we saw nothing happen. I have to get that out of the way. It's like a legal disclaimer every single night. Nothing happened up here. But in the area of Nizhny Dovanka, we did see that the 8th Brigade attacked some Russian infantry today with somewhat good results. When you see the Russian BMPs moving through the field, and they're about a BMP themselves, we can see them continuing to move on through the field, through a varying amount of terrain. We can now see the Russian infantry running behind it, and we can now see one of the BMPs get hit. The footage is lagging greatly. It appears to be a Microsoft PowerPoint, but we can see that the BMP is on fire and has been destroyed. And with that, that's the end of the clip. But it's always great to see that the Ukrainians were able to ambush a Russian infantry squad with their APC and destroy the APC and inflict some decent losses on the infantry. We're now going to be moving on down into the area of Makivka. This is not the Makivka near Donetsk. This is Makivka in the Luhansk Oblast. And this all gets very confusing once you really start looking into Ukrainian town names. But we saw a Ukrainian chef today, and he was making a tasty meal. And all I have to say, Matthew, is let him cook. And so,
Let him cook.
Anyone can cook. Even that Russian.
Not really, though. He was kind of lying.
Well, I'm not gonna. Well, let me start that one back. Let me start that one liner back over. Anyone can cook. Even that Russian over there that just got in the white phosphorus, he can cook well. And so with that, here's the clip. Well, you see, he's doing like the smiling cooking thing that you see on TikTok a whole load. I wonder, is the music? Oh no. Oh no! And let's see if it is. Okay, it's certainly not.
Oh, it's actually decent.
We can see a little cat got a treat. We can see him sprinkling it with salt and seasoning.
Gotta have the seasoning.
We can see him pouring in the oil. Well, this is where all the oil in the world went. In case you're wondering why the gas costs so much, that's where all the oil went. It's right there. But we now see him heating up the oil and putting the meat on the fire. We now see him flipping them over. We can see him putting out some sauce. And I don't even know what that was. We now see him getting out a literal block of butter. Usually it's a stick of butter. I've never seen a block of butter. We can now see him putting in the garlic, I believe. He's now putting in the meats. He's now pouring in the sauce. We can now see it
This
cooking.
is at the front line?
This is at the front lines.
What in the hell?
What the hell? But we can see him pouring it.
This is eating too good for the front lines.
And this is why, everyone, the Russians will never win this war. And also everyone's saying sunflower oil. Oh, duh, it's sunflower oil. It's a joke, y'all. It's a joke. It's obviously not like car oil. He's not pouring car oil into his pan. But anyways, it is really crazy to see the kind of good cooking they can get to on the front lines. Because it's like, dang. Like, do they even have supply issues? I feel like they don't. Like, the Ukrainian logistics are like the ideal logistics, where they don't even have to work off of rations or MREs. They just bring fresh food up and they cook that instead. Pretty cool. I like it. I love to see it. And so with that, we're moving on out of the northeastern area and on down into Bakhmut. And Bakhmut's been a fun time today. So, moving on down there and making sure that we're on yesterday. It was Bakhmut yesterday, and before I even move forward, I have to give this as a little bit of a disclaimer. Deep State UA has been proven, at least right now, to be inaccurate. They are not showing an up-to-date, to-the-minute update on what the frontline situation looks like, and I can't really blame them. It's most likely for operational security purposes to make sure that they don't show exactly where the Ukrainians have made it, just in case if the Russians don't know. It keeps them guessing. But we can see that they've updated the map today, getting it a little bit towards Klishchiivka, and the Ukrainians have made an amazing amount of progress. Now, I just want to make sure that I ease y'all into this, because what we've already shown on our map, that they've taken Klishchiivka and they've moved beyond it, because the information we have shows that they have. But Deep State UA is about to fill this map with blue, and it looks like the Ukrainians are conducting a blitzkrieg nearly in Bakhmut speed in the southern area. And so, are you ready, Matthew? Are you ready for me to click the forward button?
Yes.
Boop. Dang! Damn, son, where'd you find this? They just took a massive amount of ground on the frontline map. We already know, and once again I have to reiterate this, it is a largely inaccurate map. They've already made it to Klishchiivka, and they are moving beyond it from what we've been told. But it is amazing to see how much ground the Ukrainians have retaken across the entirety of the Bakhmut battlefield, at least at this point right now. And it's great. And it gets even better when we see the frontline videos. And so moving on up into the very farther northern area of the flank near Mykolaiivka, we saw the 12th Brigade destroying some Russian vehicles in this area. Also, let me go back and get this video to full screen. Oh, and I have to mute that. But when you see that one hitting a BMP-2 and exploding on the back of it, and when you see this one going right into the hatch, that was a very good shot. Very good one. Incredible, I must say. We now see the MTLB roasting down there in the trench.
You know, the Ukrainians probably could open up a franchise of Kenny Rogers roasters out here.
Man, they could, man. And you better watch out, man. Kramer be sitting over there. I gotta get in the roasting business. But anyways, with that, we're going to be moving on down into the area of Krasna Ora, where we saw some Ukrainians firing an RPG at the Russians. And also, music ensues. I have to mute it, but
Here we can see the Ukrainian soldier preparing to fire his RPG. A typical weapon of the Ukrainian armed forces, they use this explosive device to clear out Russians from wherever they may be. We can now see the Ukrainian running off as the next one moves up to fire off his blue tape-covered RPG. Much like a gang signal, they are repping the set with the blue tape. We can now see the next Ukrainian running back up with another RPG and firing it off. Poof! The wooden splinter almost killing the cameraman, but as we all know, the cameraman never dies. You can see the wood splinter right there. We can now see him running off again as the next man is ready, and he now moves back up to the area to continue to fire his RPG.
and I gotta say, it's beautiful. And so with that, we're going to be moving on from that little clip and on down into the area of Berkivka, where we saw that the 10th Brigade was also attacking the Russians today as well. When you see, it's just dawn, and we can see a Ukrainian tank firing into a Russian position several times. And we hear the music slowly increasing in volume in the background, which gives me the heebie-jeebies and makes us mute it. We can now see them still at the break of dawn, enjoying a couple of drinks before the day's fighting begins. Now I see Ukrainian commander shouting out some orders, most likely to the cameraman, and we can now see in the broad daylight the tank continuing to hit those Russian trenches inside that tree line, as we now see the cameraman is somewhere in that area and moving forward through the destroyed trees. We can now see the Ukrainians still moving forward. Sadly, the camera is blocked. We can see the trigger of the AK right down there at the bottom left side of the screen. We can now see him tossing a grenade and getting low. As the grenade explodes, we can now see him getting right back up and continuing moving up. We can now see him spraying a Russian trench and clearing it on out. And we now see him throwing another grenade down a Russian bunker. The grenade then explodes. And we can see a bird's eye view of the Ukrainians continuing to move on down the tree line. We see a grenade exploding in another foxhole. And we see them once again firing into it to make sure that it is completely clear. We can see them continuing to fire and making sure that those trenches are cleaner than a Publix, I guess you could say, ground floor level shopping area. We now see them firing from a prone position as the cameraman fires from a crouch position. Something exploded in front of them, most likely another one of their grenades. We now see him looking around the tree. We now see them continuing to fire. It appears that they're having a firefight down the length of the tree line. We can see what appeared to have been a Russian in a bunker right there. We now see what may have been a Russian soldier on the run, and it appears that the Ukrainians are making sure that he makes a run for his money. Looks like the guy's absolutely legging it. He's even giving Usain Bolt a little bit of a run for his money, but sadly he won't be running for money anymore. We can now see the Ukrainians continuing to hold their positions, making sure to fight the Russians down the length of the tree line. And we can now see something exploding on the drone camera. It appears that it was near the position where that Russian was running previously. We now see them tossing some grenades. Poof! And when you see it explode right there, throwing up some black smoke. And now we can see them once again making the advance forward. Tossing grenades into the holes that they find, making sure that they're completely emptied of Russians. We now see them continuing to fire. Everyone's got a silencer in this war. I really like it. Gotta say, wish I had one.
I have to have to wait 12 months to get it.
Sorry you didn't file the form correctly. Make sure to reapply. But it's been a year. Yeah, sorry it took us that long. But, you know, it is what it is. We can see them still clearing out the outposts. And we now see from a drone view, the Ukrainians still moving forward, and they've been moving through this tree line quite methodically, making sure to clear every single area before they advance. And we see them still moving up right here. Of course, not a lot of cover to hide behind, and really nothing to hide the Russians from the drones above who are trying to find them right now, as the canopy of the tree line has been completely destroyed. We can once again see the drone view. They now move a couple of dozen meters further down the tree line into another bramble of broken twigs and branches on the ground. It seems as though the cameraman may be yelling out to a Russian soldier who's surrendering to come forward. And we now see one of those Russians crawling out of the hole. He's putting his hands up, and they process the prisoner, and they continue to move on down the tree line, nearly making it to the end of it, and having cleared the entire thing from start to finish. With that, that's the end of the clip. But pretty wild to see the Ukrainian 10th Brigade continuing their push in the northern area around Berkivka. Moving on towards Yehidne, we also saw an artillery barrage near dusk, showing us what I guess you could say is the weight of the artillery being levied against the city. It didn't really explain whose side was firing this artillery, so it's really up to you who fired this artillery. But here's the clip. And you see the shells exploding. Of course, a lot more pronounced in dusk than it is in broad daylight. Interesting. And so with that, that's the end of that clip, and really nice to see. And with that, we're now going to be moving on into the city, where we saw an abandoned Spartan. These are a British APC, and while we usually don't show Ukrainian losses, one can not say that the Ukrainians have taken no losses during the Battle of Bakhmut. And unfortunately, this itty-bitty Spartan was one of those losses. When you see that it appears that the track came off on the right side of the vehicle, you see a sticker that was put onto the side of it. And when you see that the vehicle didn't burn out, apparently it was detracked, or one of the drive wheels or road wheels came off and they just abandoned the vehicle. We now take a look inside and we can see that it's been a little while before this thing's been used. You now see them looking in the driver's position and around the outside of the APC, and with that, that's the end of the clip. But really interesting to see that a little FV-103 Spartan APC was just left in the city of Bakhmut after it appears to have had a demobilization issue. With that, we're going to be moving on into our next clip, where we can see the ruins of Bakhmut in pictures. This is where the battlefield is at the moment, and this is what it looks like. The Russians and the Ukrainians have been barraging the city, wherever the Russians or the Ukrainians may be, a fairly large amount. Once again, we can see that abandoned FV-103 right there, once again. So it's in the same area, actually. This is all within the same part of the city, and it is really wild to see how thoroughly destroyed Bakhmut has become. It is worse than Mariupol at this point, and Mariupol was bad, and this is far worse than that. Luckily, though, there weren't a lot of Ukrainian citizens left in the city while the fighting was going on. There were 500,000 people in Mariupol during that battle. In Bakhmut, I believe there was less than a few thousand, maybe 2,000 people who were left behind after the evacuations ended. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from those pictures of the battle and on into our next bit, where we saw the city of Bakhmut on fire due to an incendiary attack that the Russians committed overnight. And so here's the clip. And it's very confusing to see, but this is taken from a hillside near Bakhmut, and they're looking down into the city. And the city is covered in white phosphorus and is burning. Very wild clip to see. It's very disorienting if you really don't know what you're looking at. I really didn't understand what I was looking at the first time I saw this clip. But once again, showing that the Russians are resorting to using incendiaries to try and drive the Ukrainians out. We're now moving on into our next clip, where we also saw the fighting in Bakhmut in the city continuing. You now hear them talking. This is the Ghost Unit. The Ghost Unit is a unit largely of snipers that operates around the city of Bakhmut, and when you see that they're in a high-rise building and looking at the early morning fog. We now hear an artillery shell roaring over and exploding. We now see him showing us the outside. We can see a building right next door. Most of the top floors have been thoroughly destroyed. And it is dead quiet except for the sound of artillery here and there. We now hear a firefight picking up a little bit further down the street. Now see him moving up to the next floor. There's no such thing as stairs in this building. They've been covered with rubble. May as well be a ramp.
Grubble.
The Grubble? Freddy Grubble? Now hear another artillery explosion as the soldier continues to move through the building. You hear the firefight picking up down the street. It appears that the Ukrainians and the Russians are slugging it out down there. And we see a bird fly out of the building.
Man, that bird said, I'm out.
Man, that bird said, alright, it's time for vacation. See ya.
Alright, I'm gonna head out.
Uh-huh. You know it, man. See. We hear the firefight still going on as the soldier shows us the rest of the building. And of course, every single room is completely destroyed. Now see him looking around the street, rubble filling the street. The firefight is now subsided. It was a very short one, only lasting a few minutes. And with that, that's the end of the clip. But once again showing the horrors of the city of Bakhmut for the most part, and the complete destruction both inside and out on all of the buildings in the area. We're now going to be moving on into our last clip from inside the city, where we saw Russian forces being targeted by artillery near the outskirts. Oh yeah, Chad music, baby. And we can see the Russians wandering around in this destroyed building. It looks like they're trying to use it as a house, but there's only 2 walls standing, so it's not really that good of a house anymore. And we now see the shells landing and blowing up smoke, and most likely sending smoke right up their rear ends. And we can see them still right there, and it appears that they're completely unfazed by the shell that just landed about 80 yards away. However, the next few ones will be getting a little bit closer, and it will start to panic them. You see them still down there. Still just doing their thing. You see the drone zoom out. And poof! That shell lands right on top of them. I have a feeling they're not acting like they're unfazed any longer. And the Ukrainian said, "We make it look easy. Walk with your boys to the graveyard."
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
And that's the end of that clip. We're now going to be moving kind of outside of the city to the Wagner unit, who is now complaining about they're not getting any ammo or any awards or anything else. And so here's the clip. We are employees of PMC Wagner. From the first day, we take part in the special military operation in Popasna and Bakhmut. We defend our homeland and shed blood. We are no longer given state awards. You sit in your offices growing your fat, and the guys here die for their country. Where are our awards? We, the fighters of Wagner PMC, have been fighting here since March of last year. We made it from Popasna to Bakhmut. And you get medals sitting in your offices, awarding orders and medals to each other. Deal with it, or we don't deserve it. I'm a fighter at PMC Wagner. Being on a combat mission in Bakhmut, I wonder why the soldiers who die for the interests of their country do not receive state awards. I demand that the persons from the Ministry of Defense involved in this problem solve it. I am an employee of the Wagner PMC. From the first day, we have been fighting fierce battles in Bakhmut. Yesterday, I learned that we are not worthy of medals. They do not want to award us. We bring out a lot of civilians. We cover them with our backs. No, you don't. And don't we deserve it? I.e. awards. I asked the Ministry of Defense to look into this and give us these awards. We are the fighters of PMC Wagner. This is the outskirts of Bakhmut. Look at the conditions under which we have to fight. Everything is destroyed here. There's no living place. And for F's sake, you can't even give us state awards for F's sakes, which we effing earned with sweat and blood with our effing feats of arms. And that's the end of the clip. But as we can hear, once again, it appears that the Wagner Company is not happy. And it appears that they're not getting state medals anymore. And to that, I have to say, boo-hoo, who's not getting their state medals anymore?
Man,
and so,
poor Wagner. They're always on the short end of the stick.
man, they're all...
it's not like they're cold-blooded murderers or anything.
Man, and look at the conditions they're having to fight in. That dude, OSHA would throw a fit if they saw a workplace like this. They need to get some people in here to improve the working conditions of the Wagner as well. I mean, look at this. This guy makes a valid point. He says, looking under the conditions we have to fight. I mean, honestly, whenever I see Americans fighting, we're always fighting in five-star hotels. And hell, even the concierge and janitors come out and make sure that all the vehicles are put back away nice and tidy, and that the rooms and walls are all cleared out and cleaned by next day, so that way the fighting can continue in perfect instances and perfect circumstances. I mean,
all the Wagner wants is their rights. That's all.
That's all they
But
want.
while they stomp all over Ukraine's rights.
Exactly. Exactly. And I don't think they are deserving of state awards. They're war criminals. And on top of that, they're Russians. So that we're now going to be moving on out of the city of Bakhmut and down into its southern flank. And this is where things get pretty nice. And so starting with this first clip, we saw that the 3rd Brigade continued advancing through the tree lines and past the area of Klishkivka. We gotta mute the Chad music when we see a Ukrainian is already prepared to deal with the Russian because he's whipped out his shovel. He's ready to dig their grave and then put them in it. We can now see them at the back of a APC right here and lugging up a marksman's rifle. We now see the APC is on the move with the troops riding on top. And we now see them getting out of the APC. We can see their marksman rifles set up. We now see them once again on patrol, moving through the fields. We can now see them once again trying to set up their shot. We can now see the Russians wandering past a tree line, and they do not know that they are the prime target of the Ukrainian marksman. We see one Russian crawling here like a baby. He went, goo goo gaga, and then the sniper went, oh, look at the rattle. Hey, that's not a rattle, that's a crack. And then they got him. Man, to call this guy Cracker Jack because he's snap. Well, I mean, that's Rice Krispies.
Yeah, something else.
We can see another Russian soldier right there on the edge of the tree line. We see the sniper firing, and it appears that he went down.
Oh,
I don't know what that was, but something flashed.
What was that?
Something flashed there, and then the video ended. It looks like they made it out of there because they uploaded the video, but I don't know what the flashes were. With that, we're going to be moving on into our next clip, where we saw the Ukrainian forces continuing to move forward in even another clip. That bass-boosted engine, baby! We can see the BMP-2 moving forward as artillery is exploding absolutely everywhere. And that transmission be crying out for help. It's going, oh God, save me.
Why does it sound like this thing has a Jake brake on it?
I don't know. That's a good question. They're still moving on. And that's the end of the clip, but once again showing the Ukrainians continuing to advance with their BMP. We're now going to be moving on to our next clip, where we saw the Ukrainians dropping them thermal barracks. They said, oh buddy, whip out the thermal barracks and get ready for seconds. The Atom Group is dropping the heat, literally. And so here's the clip. We can see some Russian soldiers here running from foxhole to foxhole. Little do they know, they're about to get a thermal barrack up their foxhole. Oh, whoops. Oh, man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. And so we can see him getting on into the foxhole which it will now be his thermobaric grave. We can see them dropping the thermobaric grenade right down the hole. Poof. And there we have it. Quite a nice shot. And also a great delivery. Ba-doom-ts. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news and further on down the line, where we saw the Ukrainians continuing to push past the village in another clip. This one by the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade, otherwise known as the Azov. And so, here's the clip. We hear this guy getting into it. The Ukrainians laying down the fire down the tree line. We now see him posting up behind the other soldier. He's now firing down the tree line, and they're starting to charge the Russian trench.
Yes.
The trench has now been cleared, and now they're giving orders to clear the rest of the area. We now hear the firefight continuing. We see him getting on in there and making sure to clear the place on out.
Нужна помощь в эвакуации. Машину.
We can see a wounded Ukrainian soldier that they're now picking up and taking onto the car. The armored car, more like an APC. It appears to be a YPR 765.
Эвакуация! Ляду открой! Давай! Я наложил турникет, смотрите, давайте, короче, спасайте его!
We now see them loading up the wounded soldier. We now see them getting right back in the tree line and getting into the pretty much face-to-face firefight they're having down here. You now see that the firefight has apparently ended for the large part, at least the first one. You now see them moving on down the tree line, making sure to continue to clear out the Russians. We now see that they've discovered new dugouts further down the line. And we now see that they made it to an opening, which they're getting into, and it appears to be empty. Well, that's the end of the clip, but showing a part of the 3rd Brigade continuing on their push in the area of Klishkivka and beyond it. With that, we're moving on into our last clip from the southern flank, where once again we saw them making visible progress. We can see the 3rd Brigade's tank firing into the distance and blowing up an ammunition depot. As they've been moving so far behind the lines, they are finding where the Russians store their frontline ammo. With that, that's the end of that clip, and we're now going to be moving on out of the southern flank and on down into the direction of Orlivka for the most part, near Zaintseva, where we saw a Russian tank burning after it had been hit. And also this video was taken from a Ukrainian trench. You see the tank roasting and toasting.
Ничего, еще чуть-чуть доебно, я думаю. Не буду его.
see the cameraman looking around. We see the tank continuing to burn as they show it. It appears that it may have been, although the camera's really shaky, it may have been a T-72 or maybe even a T-90M, although it's still really hard to tell. Well, that's the end of that clip, but once again, great to see another Russian tank burning. We're now going to be moving even further on down the line and towards the area of Makivka, where we saw that a Russian aircraft was shot down today, and it was filmed on video. When you see the aircraft breaking up out there.
Sounds like someone's breaking up.
Was this the one that they said was shot down by the Patriot, or is this a different one?
I believe this is a different one, because this one's in the area of Makivka. In Donetsk. And so with that, we're going to be moving on from that clip. Great to see another aircraft shot down. And now, we get to see something really nice. These are pictures of an area that was hit by a HIMARS, and it appears that it destroyed nothing but T-90Ms. There are 9 of them here in this picture. 3, 6, 7, 8. Whoops, sorry. There's another 9th one in the other one. Let's see, up there, I think is the one that's missing in this picture. But 9 of them were destroyed. Out of these, from what people can tell, 1 of them was a T-90A, the other 8 were T-90Ms. The Russians only have about 50 of these, and they just lost 8 of them right there. Oh, wow. I like it. And so with that, very nice to see. Very great to know that some of Russia's best tanks are now nothing more than junk. And with that, we're now going to be moving on from that nice little bit of news in the Donetsk area and on into the front line near Mariupol, where we saw a small firefight occurring in the ruins of the city today. And we hear the choir music playing as a tank barrages a small house. We now see the tank looking into the building. Smoke filling the air. And the Russians will have the audacity to make a city look like this and then say to the Russian government, look what we have to fight in. It's like, you made it like this. And we can see the watermark floating across the screen again, like some kind of a phantom. And there it goes. Is it coming back? Is the watermark coming back? Yeah, I wonder. And, oh, there it is. It's back.
Oh, it's back. It's another one.
That's the battle continues.
Another one.
Another one. And so with
We
that,
the best.
DJ Khaled. But anyways, that's the end of the clip, and we can
Real
see
life.
real trapped. But anyways, that's the end of the clip, and we can see that the Battle of Mariupol still carries on. Moving on to the area of Nova Mykolaievka, we can also see that Madyar and his boys were able to destroy a Cope Cage tank.
Поки всі на вечір
Third boy Madyar! And we can see a T-72B with a Cope Cage.
коротенько нагадаю вам про ефективність дронів камікадзе FPV. Той фраз думає, кить у нього на даховий грил, та ніч його не возьме. То не так. Цікаво, що він хотів написати на тому полі.
And we see that this thing has been driving literal circles. We can now see the FPV drone coming in.
Ось такою гарною цукерочкою. Знайомий малюночок. Добре. Працюємо. І тугомаш. Як виглядало зі сторони. Паф! Джага-джага. Треба повільніше подивитися.
The famous lines.
Дивимося повільно, в повторі з верхнього кутика. Джага-джага!
Hey! I love it.
Добре.
Madar's got that crazy streak in him, but we love him.
Деталі.
Man, he got that dog in him. And we see it hitting him again. Third time. And whoa. Oh, wait a minute. That was a replay. I was like, oh my god, it just blew up.
Погляд очима пілота FPV дрона. Постріл другий. Фінальний. На вірочку, як кажуть. Пав! Ну і дивимося ззовні. Ай, джага-джага.
Блядь.
Hmm.
Oh, and there goes
Blew
the
a little
pieces.
tile off.
Man, man, they hit that thing and a spam can came flying out. It's just like, what's this thing made of? Meat?
Уповільнено.
Dude, he's
I
even talking
agree.
in slow motion. I agree with him, absolutely.
На добраніч.
And with that, that's the end of the clip. But great to see a T-72B knocked out of action. We're now going to be moving on from the area of Novomikhailivka and on down the line and into the area of Staromanyivka, where we saw another Russian tank destroyed by the 44th Brigade. Also, we have to mute the heavy metal.
Goodness.
And we can see the T-72 right there. And we can see it's about to be not there. It's about to be gone. Poof. There it goes. And it's on fire. It's gone. $3.5 million gone in one go. Love to see it. Always happy to know they lose their tanks every single day. They lose tanks quicker than most people are able to lose, like, their sanity. And, you know, that happens pretty quickly. And so it's great to see. Wonderful to see. And with that, we're going to be moving on from that little clip and on into our next one near Lubomivka, where we saw a hyacinth destroyed. While I sit there and absolutely screw that word over, I said hyacinths. It's a hyacinth. Here's the clip. Man, that's an absolute
Dear
bomb.
Lord.
But anyways, you can see the trucks on the move. You see them setting up the gun. Man, they got that piece. We now see them firing it.
Dang, they got that thing aimed up at the sky.
Man, and that thing came down like it came from the sky. And there went the hyacinth. Great to see. And we always love to see it. We love to see it. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little clip on the southern front and on into our next bit down near Huilopol, where we saw some Russian equipment destroyed. We see it right there. No point in playing the audio. I already know it's copyrighted. I usually just do that to prove that it's copyrighted, but you see the tank being hit right there, and it appears that some equipment has been destroyed. We now see another one smoking. And remember, kids, smoking kills. We can also see another one smoking. That one appears to have already smoked itself to death. And we can see Mark Zuckerberg over here smoking the meats. It appears that it's gotten a little out of control. With that, that's the end of that clip. And once again, we'd love to see it. We're now going to be moving on out of the southern front. Sorry, yeah, we are still in the southern front. We're going to be moving on into the Dnieper River in the southern front, where we saw a crossing occur with the river boats. And you all love river boats, right? It's like romantic and everything, right? Right? Yeah, I bet it is. Anyways, here's the clip. Whoa. Sounds like someone's playing some real trap. And now we can see the boats crossing the river. You can see it's a little flotilla of boats. And we can see them at the ready with grenade launchers, machine guns, and the like. We can see this guy's even got a whole-on Glock. Dude, he is spinning he is spinning the block out here. He's gonna do a drive-by near the shore with his boat. We see the operator on the machine gun. We can see the bridge. Very nice boat. We see an M250 cal on the front. We now see them loading off of the landing craft that they had.
These guys look American for some reason.
That's because we give them some of our good stuff, and so they look American, naturally. And would you look at that? It's a war game.
I was about to say, they don't need to practice the surrender, then they'll never do that.
We can now see them simulating a damaged boat. We can now see them using a BTR-82. Now we can see him talking to his soldiers with that thing on his chest. He got that thing with him, and he got that dog in him.
I like how focused the guy on the right is. He is dead focused.
Yeah, he is, man. And they're still playing that music loud as hell. We can now see them still racing down the river. And that's the end of the clip. But really neat to see the Ukrainians training their flotillas on how to operate. We're now going to be moving on behind the lines to the area of really just the southern front in general, where we saw some Ukrainian Mi-24s and Mi-8s flying over the hills in the countryside.
A lot of fun.
And so we're going to have to mute that. It's a lot of fun, though. We get that point. We can see the Mi-24s flying over the hills. Very nice, very beautiful. We can see him in Mi-8 over there. And I gotta tell you, nobody flies them better than the Ukrainians. Always beautiful countryside, the best countryside. Some people say that you just can't top this kind of countryside, and I can't disagree with them. But I gotta tell you one thing that doesn't look like this. It's gotta be Rosie O'Donnell in that truck seat. I gotta tell you, not a good look. Very bad scenery. But with that, that's the end of the clip. I'm great to see the Mi-24s on their flight. And with that, we've covered all of the news, north to south, east to west, from Ukraine today. And so, without further ado, it's time to go to Kyiv for the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky from Saudi Arabia, I believe, at the Arab League Summit. And so, without further ado, here is the speech. Speech!
Oh, wow. He got that swag walk going.
Man, call him Driplinsky.
Now I call on His Excellency Vladimir Zelensky, the President of Ukraine, to deliver his speech. You have the floor, sir.
I hope that most of us are here for the sake of peace and justice. Dear participants of the summit, today is the 450th day of the full-scale war waged against us by Russian invaders. We do not have missiles as our enemy has. We have less air power. We do not possess numerous killer drones that Iran supplies to Russia. We do not have that much artillery, but we do stay strong because we do have truth on our side. Moreover, we are pushing the occupiers out of our land. Anyone who defends his native land from invaders, and anyone who defends children of his nation from enslavement, every such warrior is on the path of justice. And I'm proud to represent such warriors and the entire Ukrainian people. Ukrainians has never chosen the war. Our troops didn't go to other lands. We do not engage in annexations and plunder of other nations' resources, but we will never submit to any foreigners or colonizers. That's why we fight, and I'm sure all your nations will understand this, our main emotion. And I'm also sure all your nations will understand the main call I want to leave here in Jeddah, a noble call to all of you to help protect our people, including Ukrainian Muslim community. With me here is the Honorable Mustafa Dzhemilev, the leader of the Crimean Tatar people, one of the indigenous peoples of Ukraine, whose home is Crimea, the center of Muslim culture in Ukraine. For centuries, the Crimean Tatar have been and should remain an integral and strong part of the Muslim community of the world. But Crimea was the first to suffer from the Russian occupation. And until now, most of those who are subjected to repression in the occupied Crimea are Muslims. We already have a positive experience with Saudi Arabia regarding the release of our people captured by Russia. We can expand this experience. And even if there are people here at the summit who have a different view on the war on our land, calling it a conflict, I'm sure that we can all be united in saving people from the cages of Russian prisons. Unfortunately, there are some in the world and here among you who turn a blind eye to those cages and illegal annexations. And I'm here so that everyone can take an honest look, no matter how hard the Russians try to influence. There must still be independence. And I want to thank Saudi Arabia. I want to thank the majority of you for supporting firm international positions and the UN Charter. Dear participants, your people have already seen that Ukrainians are people of peace, of real peace. In 2021, we made a priority. Ukraine opens to your people and the people of Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, Oman, Bahrain, Kuwait got to know Ukraine. And I'm happy that your tourists were able to see the splendor of spring in our capital, in Kiev, and the majesty of the Carpathian Mountains. I believe that one day your people will come back also to see our Crimea, Ukrainian Crimea, free from Russian occupation and humiliation. Our relations are also tied by the education of tens of thousands of Arab students in our universities every year. And it really is an honor for us that children from Morocco, Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, Lebanon, Algeria, Libya, and Tunisia went to Ukraine for education. With you, we fulfilled one of the most honorable tasks in the world, food security. Ukraine traditionally supplies your countries with wheat and other agricultural products. We were glad to welcome the investments of the Arab nations, as well as the investments of Qatar in the port infrastructure. First, the pandemic, and then a more terrible virus, the rabies of aggression, hit these and our other normal relationships. And I'm more than sure that none of you will agree to surrender a third of your country to the invaders. And I'm more than sure none of you would watch without a fight how foreigners steal the children of your people. Hundreds of thousands of our children are deported to Russia, separated from their relatives. And there in Russia, they are trying to teach our children to hate their natives. And I am more than sure that none of you would admit the military occupation of a nuclear plant to use it to blackmail the world with nuke disaster. Look at how much suffering the long-term wars have brought to Libya, Syria, Yemen, how many lives have been wasted by years of fighting in Sudan and Somalia, in Iraq and Afghanistan. Everyone who adds to suffering by his new aggressions, everyone who sows enmity, everyone who wants to bring back the old days of invading empires that didn't count with the will of independent nations. Every aggressor goes against the world and will be cursed by the people. And I greet everyone who is ready to join us on the path of justice. Ukraine proposed the peace formula to end the war. You can see how it works on the example of food security, one of the points of our formula. Even when the war is thrown into our home, we do everything so that the homes of other peoples also survive. We managed to launch the Black Sea Grain Initiative and partially lift the Russian naval blockade of our ports. This stabilized food markets and helped many, including the nations of the Arab League. The implementation of another point of our peace formula will also help many, the return home of all captives and deportees. Each of the honorable delegations was given a document in your language with 10 points of the peace formula. Please, you can choose the point to help that you consider appropriate, and I will be grateful to each of you who will choose exactly the direction of rescuing people held in Russian captivity. So I invite all of you who respect peace, to join the implementation of the peace formula, and thus to reduce enmity and wars, suffering and evil. Russia is weak. We beat it even when it has more weapons in their hands. Its aggressiveness doesn't come from strength, but from the understanding that the time of empires has passed. That's because the time of free independent nations will never end, and Ukraine proves it. I wish you peace. I invite you to cooperate directly with our country without any intermediaries, and may our and your strengths act in a coordinated manner for the peace and good of people of all nations. And please listen to the Crimean Tatar people, listen to the Muslims of Ukraine. May the Almighty protect our soldiers. Slava Ukraini. Thank you.
I do thank.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on the 450th day of the war. And that wraps up our war news summary for today as well. We're about to be moving on into our question segment, but before we do, I have to thank each and every one of y'all so much once again for watching our entire news segment. And if y'all did enjoy and y'all are new to this channel, make sure to subscribe. It makes us really happy when folks subscribe. It lets us know that people enjoy what we do. And we also run this stream every single day of the week, 6 days a week, except for Mondays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And so not only will you make us really happy if you subscribe, but if you want consistent news and reporting on the war, you will also find that here as well. And so with that, we're about to be moving on into our questions segment. And before we get into it, we've got to get to our polls. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, and real quick before we jump back into our mini polls that we have about 5. I want to say big thanks to Charlie Nickel. We did check the P.O. box today, and we saw that we got a package from him. He sent us a graduation gift. It was 2 pair of Ukrainian socks that I didn't even know they made, and it was super cool. I believe they're the Ghost of Kiev socks. They're like in the Ukrainian colors with a trident on it. I should have taken a picture to show everyone, but super cool. And big thanks to Charlie, and thank you very much for sending it because I will certainly be wearing them.
And I got to thank you so much as well, Charlie, for sending that. I actually have them right here on my desk. One of them is a badger with a finger up. It's got a middle finger up. Pretty nice. Like to see it. Love to see it. And we also have the Ghost of Kiev socks, which have that Ukrainian, like, digital blue camo, and they're really cool. I like them. And so I got to thank you so much, Charlie, for sending that in the mail. That was really nice of you, and we will make sure to wear them. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And thank you, Matthew, for also reminding me that we have to get to that, because usually I always forget about something in the background, and Matthew's like, remember to mention that. And so thank you for bringing that up. And also thank you, Charlie, once again for sending that. That was a really neat little graduation gift right there. And with that, we are now moving on into them polls.
All right, and our first poll says, the U.S. says that the Wagner Group is trying to get weapons through third parties, and what is your assessment? 63% said Russia still isn't giving them weapons, 12% said unsure, 7% said it's probably for secrecy only, and 17% said they are just supplementing their ammo. And I'm with the 63%. I really doubt that Wagner is getting the ammo that Russia promised it, because that would go against Putin's wishes politically, because he doesn't want Wagner to build up their forces again, so that way they can come back and try to get him later. Because Prigozhin and Putin, believe it or not, are very, very tough enemies against each other. It's not just for show. They actually have a rivalry going on. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say, me personally, I think that they're probably not getting the ammo they need, and they're probably not going to get it even if they go to Mali, which is where they're supposedly going to try and get ammo. I don't think that's really going to work for them, because they're getting mauled, and there's no E in that maul. It's just maul, and there's not going to be enough ammo for them to stop themselves from getting mauled. Not mauled, but mauled. And so with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we're on to the next one. But before we do, I actually saw someone say this in the live chat, Matthew. Shoigu! Это non непрепятственно! But with that, we're on to the next one.
Gerasimov! All right. And our next poll, our next poll says Chinese media reports that their Ukraine peace proposal is unsuccessful, but they'll keep trying. And what are your thoughts? 65% said China needs to stop. There's no point. 9% said unsure. 23% said no harm in trying again. And 3% said China's efforts are noble and go on. And one answer I can definitely rule out 100% is China's efforts are not noble. China has no interest in helping Ukraine come out on the winning end of this at all. Their objective is to help out their buddy Putin, and any efforts that appear otherwise is simply a farce. So I'm with the 65%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say it's not good intent. They should stop right now and not continue on. And it is pretty funny to hear that their peace proposal got shot down. I didn't even think we heard the great amount of detail on it. It's just that they sent one and it got shot down. Not surprising. And if we actually heard the terms, they probably weren't good terms for Ukraine at all. And the Ukrainians probably found out that the Chinese weren't any friend of theirs. And so with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well. And we are on to the next one. Also, if y'all hear me making that pause every once in a while, I have to explain that real quick. We ran out of nitro cold brew tonight, and so I only had a half amount of nitro cold brew that I usually have, and so I'm sitting over here and literally fighting my jaw to not yawn because the coffee is already wearing off. But with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, since you asked, the talks only lasted one day. The Chinese envoy showed up to talk, and they basically said something along the lines of, would you be willing to give up some territory to Ukraine? And obviously Ukraine's not going to do that. So that's how quickly the conversation ended, and they left with no results whatsoever, just to prove that China's just showing up to say that they showed up, and they have no intention of actually promoting peace.
Dude, they showed up, they said, give land. Ukraine said, no, and they went, aw, and then they left. That's it. That's all that happened. But with that, we were on to the next one. Very interesting to hear.
All right. And our third poll says Zelensky will appear in person at the G7 summit in Japan. And is this Ukraine's moment to secure major support? And also, I was told by a viewer before we get to the results that this actually might be up in the air now. It looks like Ukraine might have changed their minds once again on this issue about him appearing in person. So as it stands, I believe this is correct, but they might change plans at the last second. It looks like 73% said yes, this is Ukraine's big moment. 9% said unsure, 6% said it depends on Zelensky, and 12% said it will be a regular meeting. And I'll say that if Zelensky appears via video, it'll probably just be a regular meeting. But if he actually shows up, that's going to send a pretty big message that he's showing up at the G7 summit, and it'll probably be their big moment to secure a very large aid package from multiple different countries. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that he may show up in person. I'm not really understanding why he wouldn't, considering that it appears that he's gotten pretty comfortable as far as this year has gone, traveling just about anywhere and everywhere. I don't know why he wouldn't want to travel to Japan for the G7 summit. So I have a feeling he probably will, and they're just trying to throw it up in the air as to whether he really will or won't. Hopefully he does, because I'm sure that'll do a lot better for him than showing up on a Zoom call. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And also, real quick, to reiterate what the G7 is, G7 members. Let me show you all a map of the G7. Let's see here. All right. So, we go, find the list of members. Here are the list of G7 members in blue. The European Union members are not a part of the G7 individually. They're all represented in the European Union. But you have the United States, Canada. This is also, I believe, a part of France. I have to believe that's like French Guyana. And then there's the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, and Japan. And then the rest of the European Union's there just because the large members of the G7 are also a part of the European Union, and so they also go to the G7 as well. But it really represented as a coalition and not an individual country. But those are all the countries that are a part of the G7, and so it's a massive summit. Largely, though, it's not reaching out to new people. Really, the Arabian League is reaching out to new people, considering they're a part of OPEC, and OPEC is a fairly important oil alliance in the world. But this isn't really reaching out to anyone new. This is largely just the NATO summit, but with Japan included. Really, I mean, that's really what it is. But it's more so economically focused than militarily focused, like NATO is. And so with that, I hope that...
I think Japan's got their checkbook out and ready, though. It seems like Japan's getting warmed up to the idea of giving out military aid to other countries and also building up their own military.
Dude, Japan be over there. They're growing up a nice military. And also, I gotta say this, the Type 10 tank is a very good looking tank.
It is pretty nice.
It is pretty nice. I like the lines. It's very nice and clean looking. pretty neat. It's actually one of the lighter ones as well in the world, because they had to make this one to where it could be transported by rail across Japan, and they also had to make it a little bit more narrow so that way it could travel on railroad cars, because the tanks that they had before this one, this one's supposed to become the mainstay tank of the Japanese army, although they are fairly expensive. They're $11 million a piece, so they're a fairly expensive tank, but they're here to replace the Type 90, because the Type 90 was such a monster of a tank in size, although they still have a good amount of these. These outnumber the Type 10 by about 3 to 1. These were so heavy they could only be used in the northern island of Hokkaido for the large part. Getting them anywhere else in mainland Japan was pretty difficult, if not impossible for the most part, and so they're trying to replace the Type 90s seen here with Type 10s. But a really cool military nonetheless, and I believe they're also working on one of their first aircraft carriers since the Second World War right now. I may be incorrect on that. Let's see, Japanese aircraft carrier. Let's see here. Let's see. New, let me type that in. Maybe that'll get us an answer. New Japanese aircraft carriers. The JS Kaga helicopter carrier being converted into an aircraft carrier beginning in March of 2022. So it appears that they may already be well on their way to having an actual aircraft carrier. There's their helicopter carrier, which would be similar to an LHD in the U.S. Navy, and they're going to be converting it into a proper aircraft carrier. So that's pretty cool. But they're certainly working on rearmament. They're certainly working on getting back out there into the world at large, at least on a military sense. And so I'm sure, like Matthew said, they'll be providing a good amount of support to Ukraine, maybe after this G7 summit. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next poll says Turkish President Erdogan says he has a special relationship with Putin and the relationship is growing. And what are your thoughts? 73% said not good, Erdogan is sketchy, 5% said unsure, 15% said it's just political talk, and 7% said that's fine, and Turkey is on the fence. And if I believe I am correct, I think the Turkish election has gone to a runoff, so we really don't know who's going to be the president of Turkey yet. So I'm beginning to wonder if Turkey has a pretty large amount of its society that believes that Putin is in the right. Because with that election looming, for him to be making these statements, that could screw him up in the election and cause him not to win if the majority of people don't support Putin. So kind of interesting and maybe telling at the same time as well. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that by, I guess you could say, Turkish election trends, it appears that Erdogan's on his way out. Because when he was brought into office, he actually won in a landslide. It was like 70% when he originally became the president of Turkey. And now that it's so close that they're having to have a runoff election, that lets us know that he's apparently slipping in popularity. And it may be the case that when another election is held, he loses. If he loses, it's most likely going to be to a candidate, and once again, I don't know the exact political lay of the land right now, at least as far as this election is concerned with Turkey. It may be going back to a more secular Turkish president who brings Turkey into what Turkey has historically been. And I actually had someone, I have to correct this real quick, because there was someone who had, I believe, an argument with Matthew in the live chat near the end of one of our streams when I was talking about this a while ago, saying that Turkey is historically a Islamic or Muslim country. That's not true. Over the past 100 years, which is what we're talking about and what Turkey is as far as the modern world is concerned, they were a strictly secular country, and Ataturk went out of the way to destroy the caliphate. If y'all don't know, the Islamic world had something similar to the Pope for a very long time, which was the Caliphate. And the Caliphate was really a part of the Ottoman Empire, or a part of the Ottoman Empire's government. And so when the Ottoman Empire collapsed at the end of the First World War and the Republic of Turkey came out of its ashes around 1922, thanks to Ataturk destroyed the Caliphate, just straight up destroyed it. And that's also why we have a lot of the cultural issues in the Middle East and the Islamic world that we still have today, is because there's really no leader of, I guess you could say, the Islamic world like there used to be. It would kind of be like taking the Catholic Church, and Italy has some kind of a revolution, and then they just destroy the papacy. You know, the Pope is gone, just gone for good. And then that's kind of the situation that the Muslims at large were left with. So Turkey in the modern world, and especially Turkey as far as everything is concerned, like their NATO membership, among many other things, is based off of their secular past 100 years of history that was laid out by Ataturk, and not the history of the Ottoman Empire, which may as well be historically separate from Turkey as a country. Turkey, in fact, doesn't really even look back at the Ottoman Empire as a part of their history. They look as far back to the Seljuk Turks, which lived in the area of Turkmenistan, which is actually named after those Seljuk Turks, which eventually moved their way all the way to Anatolia, and also the Turks of the steppes, because that's where the Turks actually came from. They came from the area of Siberia. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And also, Kristen Cruz said Erdogan got 49.4% of the votes in the first round. It's going to take a miracle for him to not get 50% in the second round. And I'd agree with that. It does look like his popularity is slipping, and it may be that the second round of elections comes around and he loses. And if he does, we'll probably see that Turkey starts to once again revert back towards its original, I guess you could say, standing in the world, as opposed to the Erdogan standing. So with that,
but in a runoff election, if I'm not mistaken, isn't it just between Erdogan and the other guy who was closest to him? It's not all the candidates again, is it?
I believe that is the case. Let's pull this up. 2023 Turkish election.
Because if it works anything like U.S. elections do, the people that got knocked out of it, those votes are going to go to either the front runner or the secondary guy. And I'm not sure how their politics work, but it could work to Erdogan's advantage.
Okay, so here's what we got right here. It appears that the Ancestral Alliance would be out of the running because they only got 5% of the vote. And, of course, we have to look at all of this and figure out what the Ancestral Alliance really stood for, because that 5%, 5.17%, could end up going either to Erdogan, depending on what party he was really splitting the most, or it could go to the National Alliance. The National Alliance, to try and explain how the political lay of the land is in Turkey, at least as far as I understand it, the People's Alliance is the one that's more so looking towards, and it's really hard to say this, but more traditional values, at least as far as the Islamic world in Turkey is concerned. It's more about rural people who have moved to the city or have been neglected largely since the foundation of the Turkish Republic under Ataturk, and haven't really been a part of the decision-making process. And they were the ones who kind of stormed the political field in Turkey in the late 90s, and that's how Erdogan became the president. The People's Alliance, well, the National Alliance, the Nation Alliance, are the Turks that Ataturk was more so focusing towards. They're a little bit more secular, and they think more so as a European, and when I say that, more of a French European than of a traditional Islamic, or I guess you could say Ottoman mindset, kind of like the rural folks think of. And so that's kind of your political lay of the land down there. So if the Nation Alliance wins, probably going to see a return back to the Turkey everyone's known for the past 100 years. If the People's Alliance wins under Erdogan, you're probably going to see that Turkey continues on doing what they're doing. Now, as far as Erdogan's statement about a special relationship with Putin, he's been saying that for a good while. However, one must remember that relationship is a little strained even still, although they call it a special relationship. We've never really seen the Turks or the Russians get along well at any point in history, even in modern history. And while they say it's a special relationship, that's really only in diplomatic form. It doesn't really extend beyond that, at least from what we could see. And so with that, I hope that addresses that the best we can, and I hope it gives as best of an explanation as possible about this election. And also, real quick, let's try and get a rundown of the Nation Alliance just to make sure I got this correct. So, let's see. Constitutional from a parliament, reforms were championed. Constitutional referendum. Nation today enjoys the support of a large and diverse section of the Turkish electorate. Let's see. Through the secularist. Yeah, this is the secularist party. So they're kind of like the original carry-through of Ataturk's beliefs, which Ataturk was a very strong secularist, at least as far as the Turkish government was concerned. So, with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well. I just had to make sure I got it right on the Nation Alliance. We know what the People's Alliance is about. It's been around for about the past 20 years or so. We don't really know what the Nation Alliance was about all too well, so I had to go back and make sure, because the past 3 decades of Turkish political history have been pretty interesting, to say the least. But with that, I hope that kind of explains what the lay of the land is, and based off of that, y'all can kind of get an idea of who y'all are rooting for. I'm not telling you who to root for, because, of course, while Turkish politics is very different than most Western countries' politics at this point, it is still a political topic, and we may have Turkish viewers. I don't want to weigh in on who I would or would not support, but that gives you a lay of the land of what Erdogan is, and what his party is about, and what Kemal is about, and what his party is about as well. So with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our last poll says Taiwan's foreign minister believes that China will invade the island by 2027, and is that credible? Looks like 34% said yes, China will invade by 2027, 15% said unsure, 28% said probably, but China has to prepare first, and 23% said no, China will not invade Taiwan. And the foreign minister made the statement based on the premise that China said they will need until 2027 to be fully prepared to invade Taiwan. Some folks say that they're already prepared to do so, but it seems like maybe they're not quite ready to pull the trigger yet. They might be waiting to see how the Ukraine war turns out, or they could be trying to simply build up their own equipment. But then again, Taiwan is rather small, so you wouldn't think it would require too much equipment, but apparently they think otherwise. But I personally think at some point that China will invade Taiwan, and maybe it is by 2027. I don't really know. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say they're probably not, because they've been saying this for a really long time. They've been saying it ever since the end of the Civil War in 1949. I would have a feeling that they're most likely never going to invade Taiwan, especially considering that they have the support of the United States behind them, at least in the modern world, and that's certainly going to strengthen as the decades go by. And also, the Chinese probably aren't prepared to invade until 2027 because their navy is not large enough, nor has the ability to support a sizable landing force in an operation against Taiwan, without sustaining unbelievable casualties, to the point that the landing force they would have right now would practically be destroyed before it even made it there. And hell, it wouldn't even make it there from then, because they have to go through about 1 million little islands that Taiwan controls. They have nothing but, I guess you could say, military weaponry on them. They're not normal islands. They're almost fortresses that they would have to pass through to get to Taiwan. So I have a feeling that it probably will be 2027 until they would be ready to invade Taiwan, at least from a naval aspect, and even then, they probably wouldn't invade it because the diplomatic standoff would still exist, and therefore it most likely wouldn't happen. And so with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, at least in my opinion, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we are fresh out of polls, so we are moving on to our Super Chat questions, and up first, we have a $100 donation from none other than, guess who? Mark, Colonel of the LSA. And thank you very much, Colonel, for the support. He says, we are overstating the debris ingestion in Western aircraft. Also, with 40 to 50 only, about 30 will be in operational readiness at any point. Even getting 5 in the air fully loaded would be massive.
And I thank you so much for the massive amount of support. And also, Matthew, can you reread that first part that he said? Because I think I may have misunderstood it.
He says, we are overstating the debris ingestion in Western aircraft, meaning the tarmac debris that gets into the jet intake.
And I thank you for the support, and hopefully we are wrong on that, because much like, I said a while ago, it didn't make any sense to what the United States was saying about the Ukrainians in regards to the Abrams. So hopefully those statements in regards to the F-16 were also untrue as well. And largely what we were doing at the beginning of the stream tonight was trying to piece together a reasonable explanation as to why that statement was made, although I don't really believe it all too much. And anyways, if that is an issue, even if it's major or a minor one, that just means they'll be consuming more jet engines than normal. They'll most likely have to replace them at a higher rate, but that's not really that big of a deal, because the jet engines can't cost that much. They probably only cost a few million apiece. I know that's a pretty big number in normal standards, but in military standards, pretty small figure, about a tank every, few weeks or maybe a month or two, who knows. But I would agree with you. Hopefully it's not that big of a deal. And also, around 30 of them would be active at any given time, but considering the size of the Ukrainian Air Force and how much they've already been able to do, and let me pull up the Ukrainian Air Force so that you can get the size numbers again, just to put it into perspective, how many aircraft 50 would be, or even 30 operational ones at any given minute. Let me go down here. So they have 32 Su-27s, they have 16 Su-25s, they have 12 Su-24s, and 51 MiG-29s, and those are the pre-war numbers. And so 50 F-16s would make it one of the largest aircraft groups that Ukraine has. 30 of them being operational means that they would have as many operational F-16s as they have Su-27s, at least in pre-war numbers. So I would say that even if it is just 30 of them and 20 of them are inoperable at any given moment, that is certainly giving the Ukrainians a major fighting advantage compared to what they've been going with throughout the entirety of the war. But with that, I thank you so much once again for the mass amount of support, Mark, and helping this channel to keep on running. And hopefully the U.S. experts are wrong in their statement that the F-16s will not be usable in Ukraine, and hopefully we'll see that they don't inhale any debris at all, or hardly at all. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running and appreciating this channel enough to find it worthwhile to support. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
And our next one is going to go to Marion Diemert, another channel legend, who puts in a $50 super chat, and sadly, no comment to address. I really hate that. But thank you very much, Marion, for the support very much and continuing to support us throughout the many months. And Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say thank you so much once again for the support, Marion, and helping this channel to keep on running. You didn't leave a comment, but the support means a lot. And I thank you so much for appreciating this channel enough to find it worthwhile to support, because folks like you do make it possible for us to run this show the way we run it, with no politics, ad-free, sponsor-free, and covering the news and picture and video evidence. If it wasn't for folks like you, we would never be able to keep this channel running in the image that we have had it in since the start, and we wouldn't be able to do this as a job. And so we're greatly appreciative of your support, and I thank you so much for finding it worthwhile to support us at all. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Right, and our next super chat is going to go to Plant Lady, who puts in a $25 super chat, and thank you very much for the support. And she says, I just to show my support to y'all and love your channel, and I can't always be with you live, but I always catch up later. And love Ukraine, and take a question from the chat.
And thank you so much, Plant Lady, for the kind words. I'm guessing you must be a lady that's really into plants. That's really cool to know. That's really cool to know. And also, I'm happy to know that we have someone who's finally made the pilgrimage to the live stream. There's a lot of viewers who always make the pilgrimage every once in a while to the stream when it's live, and they're like, "Hey, it's live!" And it's happy. I'm happy to know that people always do, and I'm happy that you're one of those people tonight. And I gotta thank you so much for appreciating this channel and finding it worthwhile to support. And also, I hope that whenever you're watching these streams back after they've gone live and they're just a video, that you know that we always think about those folks who come after the stream is live, because there are loads of people who can't watch them live. A lot of our European viewers and viewers around the world have to catch it later on in the day after it's been live, and we're always thinking about folks like y'all. And I got to thank you so much once again for being a huge fan of this channel, being a part of the LSA, and of course supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Oh, yeah,
right.
let's make sure to get that live chat. I'm sorry, I forgot that part.
Oh, almost forgot. The live chat question is going to go to John Smith, who says, when will Ukraine get their nukes back from the 90s?
I don't think they ever will get their nukes back. They were actually taken away from them because they were not a part of the non-proliferation nuclear treaty that laid out the countries that could or couldn't have the nukes. When the Soviet Union dissolved, the Russian Federation inherited the position that the Soviet Union had with their nuclear weapons, and the Ukrainians did not. And so they were given away to the United States to be disarmed, or they were given back to Russia, so that way they would not be in violation of that treaty. So I don't think they'll ever be getting those 1990s nuclear weapons back, because they would be in violation of treaties if they did. And so with that, I hope that does answer that fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for supporting and finding this channel worthwhile to support, because folks like you do make it possible for us to keep this thing rolling. And so thank you so much once again. I hope I addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to George A., who puts in a $25 super chat. And thank you very much, George, for the support. He says, thank you, Enforcers, for your heartfelt support of Ukraine.
And thank you, George, for your support of this channel, so that way we can keep on doing this as a job. Folks like some folks do or don't know that folks like you, George, are the front line in between us being able to do this and not. And y'all have helped us to be able to continue on with our Sunday fundraisers and continuing on to keep attention on this war as best as we can. And I got to thank you so much for enjoying the work we do, because folks like you have made it possible for us to do this for so long and help us to continue to keep on doing this for much longer. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope I addressed that fairly well, and thank you for being a part of this Lee Spring Army and helping us to keep this thing rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and while I press reorganize on the spreadsheet, our next one is going to go to, let's see here, Santiago Flores, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Santiago, for the support. He says, great news. I suspect they are going to be ex-Dutch, excuse me, and Belgian F-16s, since they are going to get the F-35s. And this is for the Coffee Fund, guys. Great job. I love the news, and I love the rabbit holes.
And thank you so much, Santiago, for the support and for the support to the Coffee Fund, because I'm going to have to get out and go get some coffee tomorrow because I'm flat out of coffee. And thank you so much once again for enjoying this channel and also the high praise. We really do appreciate high praise. Honestly, sometimes it feels like it is way too high praise, but it always seems very dismissive to always dismiss praise. So we just take people in the end. But I do thank you so much for the support. And also, to answer that, I would agree with you. I think it certainly will be Dutch F-16s. I have a feeling that the Dutch will certainly be sending theirs. It may even be Belgian or maybe Polish F-16s. The Polish do have a massive number of F-16s, almost the exact number the Ukrainians are looking for. And so I would certainly agree with you. It will probably be the Dutch, the Belgians, or the Poles that end up sending their F-16s to Ukraine. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Santiago. I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you for being an old guard in the Lee Spring Army and, of course, helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again. And also good night to Mark, Colonel of the LSA.
And good night to Mark as well. Got it wrong earlier. So, there's a few folks that said good night to him, so I just jumped on the bandwagon. And it turned out Mark wasn't getting off for the night. But just joking around. But moving on to our next super chat, we have a $20 donation from Charlie Nickel. And thank you very much, Charlie, for the support. Hey! And big thanks again for those socks. And he says, I've been traveling like crazy, and it's been great watching the stream while in the air. It makes time fly by, with no pun intended. Thanks for always showing up and not just phoning in. And love Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support. And thank you for being here with us tonight again as well. It's unbelievable to think that folks stick with us every single night, much like we stick with running this stream every single night. And I'm happy to know that so many folks like you do hang around with us every single night. As far as phoning it in, I'm pretty happy that we don't. I always try and put in the maximum amount of effort to make sure that we are not just present, but we're also here. We try our best to do that, and I hope we deliver on that every single night, because I really hate when you get on a stream and it almost feels like you're passively watching. Wait, let me redo that one. Anyways, you're passively watching someone else just passively existing while a camera's on. I don't like that. Some people do that almost nonstop, and it's like watching paint dry. And of course, we're not going to get into who those channels are. You know, that's a taste preference thing. Folks do like them, obviously, otherwise they wouldn't be on YouTube, but that's certainly not my thing. And I'm hope that it's not y'all's thing as well, because we usually try and make sure that the stream is as high stepping and high energy as possible, because man, I'm telling you, I cannot stand getting on a live stream that is low energy. I hate that stuff. It's like, if you're going to do a low energy live stream, just don't do one, in my personal opinion. That's how I think of things, because you're not even delivering anything to anyone. You're just being a boring bump on a log, and you're not even delivering anything to anyone. But I do thank you so much once again for the support, and enjoying this channel enough to send us some kind words our way. And thank you so much once again for helping this thing to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Certify, who puts in a $20 super chat. And sadly, no comment to address. But Certify, thank you very much for the support, and also watching the channel for a super long time. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to tell you, man, I'm about to be certifying this. I don't know. I was trying to figure out how to make that work. I was like, no, I was sitting there like, what the hell do you certify? I was like, I don't even know. I don't even know how in the world I can make a pun on that. But I do thank you so much for the support, certify. What happened? Now y'all can see what happens when coffee wears off. Like, jokes just literally break apart because I don't even know what to do with them. But I do thank you so much for the support, Certify. You didn't leave a comment, but the support does mean a lot and helps us to keep this channel running. And I got to thank you so much for thinking of us behind the scenes and supporting us so that way we can make this a reality each and every night. And so with that, thank you so much once again. Thank you for being an old guard in the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And our next one goes to James Lynn, who puts in a $20 super chat. And thank you, Lynn. Excuse me. Thank you, James, very much for that support. I was going to call him by his last name like he was in the military or something still. But James says, runways can be remade in a short period of time, and the USAF Red Horse teams have composite planking they laid down to quickly improve runways. A runway can probably be improved in a couple of days with enough manpower.
And I thank you so much for the support, James, and also bringing that up. It is pretty easy, from what we understand, to repair runways. However, I don't know about repaving the entire runway. I would say that it would be pretty tough probably to do that. I don't know how long it takes to pave a tarmac though, so I'm not really an expert on that. I'd most likely defer to you on that one. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Greg Carmen. And thank you very much, Greg, for the support. He says, thank you for keeping this channel going.
And thank you so much, Greg, for enjoying this channel and enjoying how we keep this thing rolling and supporting us that way we can keep it rolling. Folks like you, I feel like a broken record. I really do. I'm sorry, everyone. I don't know how to come up with different words for stuff like this because there's so many times that I have to thank folks, and I can't think of other ways to say it. And so I hate sounding like a broken record, but I'm truly sincere whenever I say this. Folks like you really do help the channel to keep running. And I got to thank you so much for enjoying our dedication to this and supporting us so that way we can continue to be dedicated to this and continue to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Wood, who puts in a $20 super chat and says, I'm English. In America, left and right seems so much more intense. How would you describe the difference between the two? Not asking for your positions, but just a distinction on how it works.
And I thank you for the support, and I would have to agree with you. Compared to what it is in the United Kingdom, over here it is a lot more extreme on both ends. If I had to say what the political tensions were at the moment, without, of course, not getting into politics or picking a political side or anything, well, when I say not getting into politics, that really more so means we're not picking a side, and we're never going to pick a side. I would say that it is incredibly almost outright hostile, really. You can actually cause a room to nearly go to blows just by saying you're of an opposite political belief in the modern day and age, regardless of what that belief is, whether it be left or right. If the room is majority the other group and you come in and go, hey, I'm this group, oh, you're nearly dead at that point. You're just asking for a fist fight to begin. I would say it's about like that. I would say it's really hostile at this point. And it's incredibly hostile because people have realized that they can polarize their base to the point that they'll never lose them. And that's on both sides. Both sides have figured that out at this point. And so they just polarized them by telling them that the other side is out to kill them, actively, truly trying to kill them. And by doing that, they make sure that their political base is so polarized that they'll almost outright attack the other side whenever they see them. And also, it ensures that their base will never wane, at least in any large scale. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least as far as I see it. And that's also why I don't like getting into politics at all. And that's another reason. There's a lot of reasons. I don't just have one reason for it. But that's another reason, is that the modern political world is so silly with how openly hostile it is, and also how much it deals in fantasy on both sides. That it's completely senseless to talk about. Like, if you ever hear anyone out there tell you that the other side is actively trying to kill you, they are probably delusional, I'd be honest with you, because, you can dislike policy, sure, from either side, but I don't see death squads from anyone's side going around and trying to kill the other side. That would just be insane, and it doesn't happen. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support. And I would say it's very different in the United Kingdom. We were in the United Kingdom back when just not trying to get into the political field over there, but just to give you the context, back when Theresa May resigned and they were trying to find a new prime minister for the Tories, we were actually over there in the middle of that. And it was very interesting to see that unfold because politics in the United Kingdom, at least the atmosphere around them, was just so much more calm, even at its most hostile, than the calmest American political scenario. It was very interesting to see. And so I was like, dang, wow, that's crazy. And when I saw that, I was like, man, why couldn't it be like this here in America? It used to be like this not that long ago, maybe a decade ago. But over the past decade, a lot of polarization has happened and it's gotten outright hostile. So it's something that I'm not really a big fan of, and also the reason why it got hostile is because people start dealing in fantasy more so than reality on both sides. That's not a one-sided thing. I know people are immediately going to be trying to tack that onto the other side that isn't theirs, but that's a two-sided thing. If you just sit there and neutrally look at it, you'll see it. And I'm not really a big fan of that kind of stuff. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support and helping this thing to keep on rolling.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from none other than Psyops. And thank you very much, Psyops, for the support. He says, new viewers' questions. Please explain in detail about how the Sunday fundraiser works. Do you ever have control of the donations? How much of each dollar does charity get? And do you profit on the Sunday fundraiser?
And thank you so much for the support, Psyops. Psyops wants me to put out a PSA about our Sunday fundraisers, and that is a really good one, by the way, and we'll make sure to go through it. So if you are new to this channel, and you're wondering, hey, your people send in super chats and they support this channel, how much of that goes to Ukraine? Well, none of it goes to Ukraine. We have a strictly divided system on where support goes, so that way there is no question of what goes where. Super chats always go to us, 100%. And that helps us keep this thing running. Now, out of that, I will say that we have bought a drone for the 231st Battalion, and that is support to Ukraine, but never send in a super chat expecting that that will automatically go to support Ukraine. That goes to support us behind the scenes because, of course, we do this as a more than a full-time job, and we have to live. And so that support helps us to keep this thing running. Sunday fundraisers run every single Sunday. Since the history of since the beginning of this channel, throughout its history, we've never missed a Sunday fundraiser. We even made a special video for Christmas Day because we were not running a stream that day, but it was a Sunday, and a fundraiser did run on that thing, and it ended up raising about $7,000. We've never missed a single one. Sunday fundraisers are always run through YouTube Give. To explain the YouTube Give system, the best way to do that is to just type it in on Google, because it is a part of Google's system, and Google owns YouTube. And so this is how we run our fundraisers. It's an actual system that is set up through YouTube where they cover 100% of the transaction fees, and they also send it directly to that nonprofit. There is a bit of a catch, however. It doesn't limit us on what kind of fundraisers we can run, so we cannot run a fundraiser for your cousin Jimmy. We can only run fundraisers for registered 501 nonprofits. That means that it has to be a fairly large and fairly credible one, like the American Red Cross, Doctors Without Borders, IFAW, the International Fund for Animal Welfare, IFC, let me think what else. The International Kitchen, I believe, is one of them that we've run. Those kinds
World Kitchen.
Yeah, World Central Kitchen. Those are the kind of fundraisers we can run, and it kind of limits us in that, but it does make sure that there is no questionability about where those funds are going, especially considering that those 501s legally have to report how they spend the donations that they receive, and also YouTube has a written guarantee right here, which is legally enforceable, that they cover all transaction fees, and also how the funds are sent to the nonprofit. So if you send in $10 to a Sunday fundraiser, $10 will go to the nonprofit that fundraiser is for. YouTube doesn't take any of it, and we also can't touch the accounts. The accounts are actually managed through YouTube, so it's completely separated from us, and we made sure to run it through YouTube Give, largely for that reason, because there could be no question through that, unless if it was a purposely malicious question to try and slander us, if we were tampering with the money, because there is physically no way we can. I can actually show you over here, if anyone's interested, proof we can't touch it by going to the earn section and going to giving. And these are the accounts right here, at least the open ones that you can still see on videos. We have to close them now whenever we want to run a new one, because if I show you here, once again to back this up, because I always want y'all to know exactly how everything works and be as transparent as possible about this stuff. If I click create a fundraiser, it says, sorry, you're limited to 50 fundraisers at this time. So we have to go through and we have to delete one of these to be able to make a new one. So that's why you don't see like 60 fundraisers here, you only see 50, is because they cap us out at 50 active fundraisers. But here are all the accounts, and the only thing that we can do to them after they've run is click edit and look through the details, and we can't even change the details on these things because they're finalized after we submit the fundraiser. So all we can do is look back over it and look at the goal that was standing there, the stuff we wrote in, and that's it. The only other thing that we can do to them is delete them. So the money is completely managed by YouTube. We can't touch it. It goes directly to the nonprofit, and YouTube covers 100% of the transaction fees. We've always run our fundraisers this way, and we will never not run a fundraiser this way, because I believe it is the most transparent and safest way to fundraise for Ukraine, and making sure that no one is being taken advantage of, or if there even is a question of anyone being taken advantage of. And so with that, I've got to thank you so much once again for the support, Sibes, and helping this channel to keep on running, and being a old guard of this channel, and also allowing me to go through this real quick, because I know we have some new viewers, and maybe some viewers who've been around for a while, and have never actually had it explained to them how our fundraisers work, and this is how they work. We'll never run them any other way, and I have to say, we really hate it when viewers come in, and they say something like, hey, I know this guy called Bert, and he's running a fundraiser on, like, I don't know, like GoFundMe. Could you support that fundraiser? Because we can't. You know, there's no way to do that. We have to run it through GuideStar's program. We also have to run it through YouTube Give, so it has to be registered in GuideStar as a 501. So if Bert's supposed nonprofit isn't a 501, it's not going to show up anywhere, and we can't run a fundraiser for that. Also, on top of that, not trying to say that everyone is always guilty, but whenever someone is not legally registered as a 501 nonprofit, there is a lot of questions there in my mind as to what they're really doing with that money. Look at James Vasquez, for example. He stole millions of dollars from people across the entire world that believed he was actually over there and fighting in Ukraine, and all he did was sit in a hotel in Lviv and rack up a massive bill in the bar. That's all he did. And that's probably the best example I have of why we don't run fundraisers like that, because there are people out there who take advantage of people's kindness, and I want to make sure to limit that as best as possible, and we do that through running fundraisers like this. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Sipes, and I hope that did address our fundraisers fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from none other than Rob IC Xman. And thank you very much, Rob, for the support. That got me choked up. And Rob says, high as a kite. Nice view from here. Seriously, reality will suck tomorrow. LSA family rocks, and truly, you are the best people, bar none. Question from the chat, please. Run silent, run deep. And Enforcer, no broken record needed, please.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, and thank you for saying no broken record. I'll try not to, and also I hope you're having a nice view, and hopefully reality does not suck tomorrow, but the LSA does rock, and they're a great they're a great group of folks, not an organization, a group, making it sound like it's an outfit around here. Hey, boss with the LSA. Oh yeah, boss with the LSA, boss. But thank you so much once again for the support. We'll make sure to get a question from the chat, and we will make sure to run silent and run deep. And so with that,
and also,
let's get a live chat. Oh, what?
And also, is Rob saying he's high as a kite, like he's high in a building, or is he like high?
I don't really know. I didn't really know, so I was kind of undecided on that one. But let's get the live chat.
And the live chat goes to Rangers Rule, who says, do you think that Japan, South Korea, Australia, and other countries form a NATO-type group?
I think they kind of could. It would be more of a Pan-Pacific kind of group than a NATO group. But they do kind of fall under that general alliance umbrella in a way. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again, Rob, for sponsoring that live chat and allowing us to answer it. And with that, we are on to the next one. Before we do, Matthew, I was just looking at the live chat and I saw a particular person you banned. And I was sitting here reading their comments. I don't know how in the world we didn't ban this person earlier. They've actually been around for a while. And the guy sat there after I just went through everything, and this is what's always interesting to me, is how people go out of their way to slander like this, is that the guy said, and this is what got him banned, that we are stealing the fundraiser money. And I don't know how in the hell people say stuff like that, because we just went through and literally laid out the whole thing step by step as to how it's run. And on top of that, what's interesting to me, and I'll be completely honest with y'all here, I don't like accusations like that. That is straight up slander, pretty much, and it's not even founded slander at all. If I knew where that person legally lived, I would have them sued for that. I really would, because I go out of my way on this channel, and like many other channels, to make sure that we run things as transparent as possible, and y'all know where y'all support goes, whether it goes to us or some other organization. It boils my blood when people just go out of their way to say completely unfounded crap, especially when we go out of our way to prove that it's not the case here and say that we would do something like that. There are people out there that did do stuff like that, and we've warned about them since the start, like James Vasquez. And then James Vasquez, lo and behold, is stealing people's money, and then people go, oh, I couldn't believe that. He wasn't a registered 501 or anything, and I can't believe he wouldn't steal he stole the money, although he was never legally obligated to send it to anyone. And then we'll run something honestly, and then someone will just get it in their fancy to sit there and just go, oh, yeah, let me go and slander the people who go out of their way to make sure that everything is as transparent and truthful as possible about this stuff. That is one of the few things that actually gets me aggravated to this point, is that we'll go out of our way to be as honest as possible, and yet people will still try and just sit there and lie about the crap when you can clearly see that it's run through YouTube. Not only is he trying to slander us, he's slandering YouTube as well by saying that their system somehow allows us to steal the money that they supposedly are supposed to be managing. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Flash1, who puts in an $18 super chat. And thank you very much for the support. They said, great show, and please grab a chat question from the chat.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for enjoying the channel and helping us to keep this thing running, and we will make sure to get one from the chat. And also, Tim, you're right, it's libel, not slander. And so with that, let's get a live chat.
I just told him facts, too, in the live chat. I was like, yeah, he's right.
Yeah, he's right.
But anyways, the live chat question is going to go to Billy McGee, who says, do you think, as I do, will Russia start concentrating on attacking runways, also viewing from northeast Thailand?
And let's see, reread that one again.
Let's see. Billy said, do you think, as I do, will Russia start concentrating on attacking runways?
I don't think they will. They're already limited on their weaponry. They can strike deep into Ukraine. And from what we've seen, they've never really focused on airfields a whole load. They usually try and focus on other quote-unquote strategic infrastructure or attacking citizens outright. So I have a feeling they'll most likely not shift over to targeting airfields, because they haven't really done that over the course of the war so far. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and sponsoring that live chat, and I hope we answered that fairly well. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And our next one goes to Psyops once again. He puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Psyops, for the support. He says, YouTube won't let me donate to the fundraiser. I'm from New Zealand. Me too. I'm from Australia. How can I help on Sunday? Is there a certain charity that's Zelensky approved that's open for U24 UA? Wink, 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 wink.
And thank you for the support, Sibes. And to answer that question, there is a fundraiser that Zelensky directly endorsed. And actually, you can find it in the description of our stream. When we are not running a Sunday fundraiser every single night, and I'll show you all this right here. So let me mute that. That's really trippy, actually. It sounds like you're talking right now. But down here in our stream description, this is actually the live stream that's live right now. If you go down here and you click show more on the desktop, you can actually see where it says support the war effort. It's the third link, and when you click it, it sends you directly to United 24's website. This is on our stream every single day. It's never not been on our stream. And so you can actually go straight to United 24 and support them there. And it even says up here that they've raised $339,570,117 through United 24. Obviously, we haven't gotten that close. We're only at like 950,000, so we have a good long ways to go. But of course, if you do want to go and support United 24, there's always a link in the description that sends you directly to it. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for support. And also, if you want to help out on the Sunday fundraiser, the best thing to do is to go around and tell people what we do on Sundays. That's probably the best way to help out the Sunday fundraiser, is to share it around with your friends on your social media or everywhere else you can, to let people know how we run Sunday fundraisers and why they should come here and support those Sunday fundraisers. And so with that, I hope that does address that very well. And also, real quick, I'd like to say one other thing, because I was just thinking about this. And I know that some people are like, man, his blood's boiling over this, but y'all don't know how much it does, considering how far we go out of the way to make sure that we run it right, and then other people can get away with what appears to be straight crookery in broad daylight, and then no one even says a word about them. But always keep an eye out for channels that run fundraisers through YouTube Give, just like we do, and then they try and insinuate that for some reason our YouTube Give fundraisers are not honest ones, because if they're questioning ours, they're questioning theirs as well. So always keep that in mind. You know, not pointing out anyone in particular, just saying that as a notice to whom it may concern. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $15 super chat from N. Gagnon, who says, hello to the enforcers. I suggest that you make a special fundraiser for wounded volunteers. My girlfriend's sister got badly wounded, and she has no financial support from the state, unlike the soldiers.
And I thank you for the support. Sadly, there isn't a way for us to directly help wounded soldiers. One of the only ways we can is through Revive Soldiers of Ukraine, and I believe they may take on some volunteers, but I think they're mostly focused on the regular armed forces of Ukraine from Ukraine. And so I would say that's probably the best we could do, but sadly I can't find any particular specific fundraisers that just help out wounded foreign volunteers. But I do thank you for the support, and I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you once again for appreciating this channel enough to support us and help us to keep this thing on running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one is from Psyops once again. He puts in another $20 super chat. And Psyops, thank you once again very much for the support. And please excuse me, I'm trying to stifle a cough here. This is another question from a viewer, I think. He says, I don't have the ability to donate. How can I help? Should I contact my area's representatives and explain why I like Ukraine and why supporting Ukraine is important? Should I also tell my friends and family about the stream?
And I thank you so much for the support again, Sibes. And to answer that, if a viewer does not have the ability to donate, like they don't have the funds or anything, one of the best things to do is to write a letter to your representative, or maybe even call their office. You can find usually a good number to call at the Cannon Building in Washington, D.C. That's where I believe all of the all of the members of the House are. That's their office, the Cannon House office building. I think let's see here. I'm trying to think of how this works. The Rayburn office building also looks like one for the House as well. I don't know which office building the Senate's in. Here it is. The Russell Senate office building and the Dirksen Senate office building as well. This is where the senators' offices are, so usually you can pull up the Cannon building or one of these office buildings near the Capitol building and find your representative, or you could just find it on their website and then mail them a letter or call them up and let them know how much you support Ukraine and how much you would like the support to continue. And some people may say, well, my representative of my district may not support Ukraine. Well, it still doesn't hurt to call them, and it still doesn't hurt to let them know that you do support Ukraine, and you are one of those constituents that may have voted for them. And if you want them to vote, if they want you to vote for them again, it would be imperative for them to maybe think a little bit more deeply on the situation of support to Ukraine and possibly turn their ideas around and go to supporting Ukraine if they want to be elected again. You always have
harass the intern enough and you'll eventually get the message across.
Yeah, you'll always get the message across by harassing the intern. That is one of the few ways in the normal world that harassment is acceptable, is by calling up the intern multiple times. Now, don't threaten people by calling them up and then, like, threatening to hurt them or something like that. That's just silly and it gets you nowhere. Call them up.
Don't go there with a bat either.
Yeah,
Please.
don't go there with a bat or do anything crazy. Just call them up on the phone or write them a letter and just make sure it's really civil. Say, I support Ukraine for A, B, and C, and list out your reasons. They may be humanitarian, they may be like mine, they may be strategic. They may have been points that they never really thought about before. And just tell them I would like for support to continue going to Ukraine. If they do support Ukraine, tell them thank you and I want you to keep it up. And if they may not support Ukraine, because there are a small number that don't, tell them I would love for you to support Ukraine for these reasons. I am one of your constituents and voted for you before, even if you did or didn't. And I think this is an imperative thing to where it may, jeopardize my vote for you in the next election. And that may really make them reconsider. And so with that, let's see. And why should explain? Yeah, and that's all. I also covered that part. I had to make sure. Should I also tell my friends and family about the stream? That is a pretty good thing to do. Really, just telling them to pull up the Ukraine war on the internet at all is probably the best thing to do. Because while I would love for people to come to this channel, watch this channel, and subscribe, we may not be everyone's cup of tea. There's people out there who may not enjoy the way we deliver the news, and there are loads of people out there who cover the Ukraine war in all kinds of different ways. Of course, I always want people to think or to hear from us that I think we are the #1 way to hear the news, because if we weren't, then what the hell am I doing here? But of course, there are people who may like the news delivered in different ways. They may want different focuses on the news, maybe a more international focus, because we're a very specific kind of frontline focus on the news. But if you wanted to, probably sharing this channel around with friends and family would be the best thing to do as far as our little niche goes in supporting Ukraine. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again, Psyops, for helping this channel to keep on rolling, also putting out another PSA in the Super Chats. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have another Super Chat from Psyops once again. It's a $10 donation. And thank you, Psyops, once again. He says, F-16s to Ukraine with a woo. Could you show the difference between it and the F-14 and show how the jets have changed? And also, my favorite aircraft is the P-51 B-29 Mosquito. And what's yours?
Let's see. And real quick, what were the two aircraft we were supposed to be comparing? The F-14 and
the F-14 and the F-16.
And the F-16. So sadly, the F-14 is largely out of the running because the U.S. has been destroying these airframes with a passion, so that way parts can't be smuggled to Iran because they still operate the F-14s. The reason why the F-14s were retired is because they were getting a little old, and they were also getting very expensive to maintain. And so the Navy wanted to find something that was a little bit cheaper. And so they went with the F-18. And so these are kind of out of the running, but they're not that bad. And also, the sweep wing that they have also allows them an added amount of maneuverability, especially for their size. But let me go down here, and let me try and find some information about the F-14 for us. Some stats, maybe. But let's see here. Let me scroll on down. Let me scroll on down. Let me scroll on down. And so, of course, crew of 2. The F-16 only has a crew of 1. I believe that guy in the back is he's the radar intercept officer. I was about to say he's the navigator, kind of the same thing, but not really. So let me scroll on down here. Let me compare the F-16 stat to stat. Dude, man, they wrote a lot about the F-16. So here we go. So it's 49 feet long. The F-14 is 62 feet long with a wingspan of 64 feet, F-16 around 32 feet. So you can already see that the F-16 is a far smaller plane, just by the overall area or volume that it has. Let's see here. What else? Fuel capacity, we're not really worrying about that too much. The top speed of an F-16 is Mach 2.05. The top speed of a F-14 is Mach 2.3, an incredibly fast plane. The range of an F-14 is 1,600 nautical miles. The range of an F-16 is 295 nautical miles. So a far greater decrease in overall range. Once again, the F-14 was more so a air superiority fighter, in one of the heavy air superiority fighters. The F-16 is about as small as an air superiority fighter can get. And it isn't really even an air superiority fighter, it's more of a multi-role. But let's see here. The wing loading, thrust to weight. Sadly, that stuff, and it's good, but, you know, it's not going to be anything that's worth really dissecting, at least on my end. And then weapons, I believe both of them, depending on the variant, could carry just about the same things, the JDAMs, paveways, and so on. And of course, on the F-16 page, they make it look like a lot because they lay out each kind of paveway, each kind of GBU, and all of those. But largely the same in what they're able to carry and what they're able to do. It's just that the F-14 practically doesn't exist. It may as well be extinct here in the Western world due to us demolishing them, and there are plenty of F-16s to go around. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that at least the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Martin Foos. And thank you very much for the support. And he says, thanks for doing this every night.
And thank you so much, Martin Foos, for supporting this channel and helping us to keep this running and enjoying that we do it every night. We try our best to keep this thing running every single night. We've only missed 2 nights out of a whole 450 days, and I gotta say, that's not a bad record. 1 day out of every 225 days is not that bad by my books. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Psyops once again. He puts in a $10 super chat this time and says, F-14 Tomcat, best cat, or is he Leopard 2's best cat? Which battle kitty does the LSA love the best? And can you run a poll, please?
That would be a pretty cool poll. Which cat is the best cat, Leopard 2 or the F-14 Tomcat? I wonder what everyone would like more. The F-14s are pretty cool. Everyone knows what a Leopard 2 looks like, and pretty much everyone knows what an F-14 looks like. But these F-14s are pretty cool, especially the later variants. Let me see if I can find one here. A good picture. I'm looking for a good one. Here we go. Actually, that's an F-14A. That's like literally the first one they ever made and was put into service. But I really like the F-14s. They're really neat looking. They're a little past their time now, in all honesty. They were introduced in the mid-70s, retired in the early 2000s, but still really neat. This was actually the last F-14 to be launched from a carrier on the Theodore Roosevelt in 2006.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. They actually took a picture of it.
Oh.
And so with that, I hope that I hope the poll will get some good votes. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Rad Doctor, who says, F-16, so exciting. That noose around Putin's neck keeps getting tighter and tighter every day. And take a live chat, please. And thank you so much for your dedication to Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support. And thank you for enjoying our dedication to Ukraine. And I gotta say, the F-16s are certainly going to be tightening that noose, I guess you could say, and also all the other aircraft that may be sent as well that we don't really know about, like Eurofighter Typhoons, possibly. And so with that, thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on rolling. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And that live chat question goes to the Sunken Grave, who says, when a minefield is laid, is there documentation of the exact location of the mines?
I think there may be. I actually, to be honest with you, I think they just document where the minefields were laid, but they don't lay out the exact spots where the mines were put down, because that probably would be too much for a frontline unit to handle, to have to map out where each individual mine was laid in the ground exactly. So they probably just lay out the general area where there is a minefield, and that's about it. At least that's what I would understand, and that's just working off of a premise of logic. It doesn't work off of actual practice in real life. It may be different than that, but I have a feeling that's most likely how it's conducted. And so with that, thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat, and I hope we answered that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Psyops once again, who says, Enforcer, can you please show the images of the artillery barrels split with the photos I sent you? And real quick, let me go to my DMs and grab those photos and send them over to the Enforcer.
And we will be waiting for those.
Copy. Paste. There's one. There's two.
Is that all of them?
That's all.
Hey, let's take a look at them. Hop. Ah, yeah, that's what happened to that Mista. Man, that thing got misted by its own gun. Look, that's sad. That's sad. Honestly, though, that shotgun that Elmer Fudd has, Matthew, that thing be looking wrong. You know what I mean? that thing
It'd be a little bit droopy.
Man, that thing be looking a little wrong. But with that, thank you once again for the support, Sibes. And I hope you enjoyed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And also, up next, we have another super chat from Sibes who puts in another 10 and says, Matt, could you please show the video I sent in the DMs? And if not, live chat, please. And let me send it over to the Enforcer for review.
And let me whip out my phone here so that way I could review it. So let's see, the sound you don't want to hear. I think I've seen this before, but let me show it to y'all because it's a pretty good one. Let's see here. Let me take y'all to YouTube. Hey, yo, what's up, YouTube? And so, here's the clip.
So you can all hear the terrible sound you never want to hear when working on turbine engines.
No! Oh, crap!
Oh.
No! No! That's what the hell is it? Down Under. That's the song Down Under. No, we don't want to play that. That's copyrighted. But still, thank you for the support, Sibes, and helping this channel to keep on running. And pretty good one. Pretty good. So that we are on to the next one. And you made me clench. You actually made me scared there for a minute. Because, like, the full screen thing glitched. And so I was like, can I stop this in time before we get copyrighted? But with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to David Prange, who puts in a $10 super chat and says, Happy F-16 Day.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, David Prange. And happy F-16 Day to all of y'all as well. Today is probably going to be a historic day as far as the decisions go in this war, and will probably be another turning point in favor of Ukraine. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Psyop Shit again, who puts in another 10 and says, Post-war Japan had an event called the Economic Miracle. I can only imagine how high Ukraine will soar. Slav Ukraine, Herom Slava.
And Slava Ukraini. And the Japanese miracle was really cool. Not to go into a long rabbit hole about it, but their economy just like bloomed. Like it was a good economy before the Second World War, but it really took off after the Second World War was over. And then they also got this like insane liking for baseball. Like Japan's national sport, I believe, is baseball. Japan's national sport. It's actually sumo. I swear, someone said it was baseball. What are two popular sports in Japan? Hey, here we go. Okay, so this is the real list of sports. 45% of Japanese people's favorite sport is baseball. It is #1 in the country. And that is really crazy that American soldiers in the occupation of Japan, which lasted, I think, 5 or 10, well, actually, I think it was like 10 years after the Second World War was over, like 1955, they brought their liking of baseball to Japan, and then it just stuck there, and it became their favorite sport, which is really cool. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Intro Dot, who puts in a $10 super chat and says, Is there a chance an incoming nuke being shot down set off warhead with nuclear fallout?
It's a chance, but I'm not sure how much of a chance it is because I don't know if anyone's tested that. But I would say it's possible. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, and I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Joel Gibson, not Joselle, like we said last night, who puts in a $10 super chat. And he says, I'd like to say thank Don for all of his hard work done. LSA rules, Don.
And thank you so much once again for the support, Don, and helping us to keep this channel running, Don, so that way we're gonna make fun of ham and cheddar, Don, because without Don, you, Don, this all wouldn't be possible, Don. And so with that...
Hey, Don, your ham and cheddar sandwich is ready, but you forgot you can't eat it.
Don, this is not halal, Don. So thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to JC Atkins, who puts in a $10 super chat and says, once again, take a live chat on Behave of your favorite LSA and Navy NCO. Great work, young men.
Hey, and thank you so much from our favorite Ellison NCO, and thank you so much once again for the support, enjoying this show, and helping us to keep this thing running. And so with that, let's go on and grab ourselves that live chat.
And that live chat question is going to go to Maria Armstrong, who says, can the F-16 fly out and land in Poland?
Yeah, it could. The F-16 fly out. You're talking about the Ukrainians flying out their F-16s and landing them in Poland? Most likely not. Because then that would look like the NATO is directly involved in supporting Ukrainian air forces. So that's probably not a good look. But if you're talking about us flying them into Poland and then sending them to Ukraine, certainly, we could certainly do that. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. And I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to KG, who puts in a $10 super chat and says, I think we'll see some big action by early June. I think Ukraine is waiting for more troops to be fully trained, and if you look at the CFR page, they show how much equipment and huge numbers.
And I thank you for the support and sharing that with us. I think we may have looked at that website before. And if we haven't, I'll make sure to try and look at it after the stream. And I thank you so much for sharing that with us and letting us know where we can find some hopefully accurate numbers on that stuff. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And our next one goes to Ansu, who puts in a $10 super chat and says, today is my birthday. And also, happy birthday to you. And they said, I was born 40 years ago, still feeling young. Long live the LSA.
Hey, thank you so much for the support. Long live the LSA. And pretty interesting here that you were born 40 years ago. Does that mean that today is your 40th birthday? If it is, happy birthday. If it isn't, then not happy birthday. But still, thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for being a part of this Lee Spring Army and helping us to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And the next one goes to Kilo Charlie, who puts in a $10 super chat and says, the NPP, please.
He said PP. But still, thank you for the support. I don't know what NPP means, or if you're talking about like this, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. I'm not really sure, but I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Psyops yet again, who puts in a $10 super chat this time. He says, the videos showing violence, death, and injured children really affect me. I'm having sad and dark thoughts. And should I call 988, the U.S. BB prevention hotline, or the 999 if I'm in the UK, and Heart LSA buddies?
And thank you for the support. And if that is a general question, hopefully you're not feeling that way, Psyops, but if that is a general question, I'd say possibly, although I got to be honest, the whole time on that line is incredibly long, because I remember kids at school would prank call them and they'd never pick up the phone. It'd be like 3 hours.
Oh man, they would prank call that line.
Man, so yeah, well yeah, remember we were like on the bus, we would be there while they were doing it, and we would all be kind of like, you know, side-eyeing them a little bit. But they would never pick up the phone. I mean, I never saw them pick up the phone and actually answer it. So I would suggest really talking to a friend or family about it, more so than a hotline, because the hotlines will probably never pick up really. But still, I do thank you for the support, Psyops, and I hope that does answer that fairly well. And I don't know if this would be solace to anyone, but this is how I kind of look at it. This is happening whether people see it or not. Is really just a fact of life. This is what wars look like, especially if you see what we don't show on stream and you see the graphic videos. It's a fact of life, and whether you see it or not, it doesn't really change the fact that it is happening out there, and you know, nothing is really going to change. That's kind of how I look at it, and kind of justify it in the back of my head that, you know, whether I was looking at it or not behind the scenes, it's not going to change the fact that it is happening out there, and it had already happened for it to be on film and me seeing it, and those guys have it a lot worse than me just watching them. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least with how I look at it. That's how I kind of deal with it behind the scenes. But with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Sausage Gravy Biscuit, who says, from your favorite breakfast food, thank you for everything. I've been around forever, and slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much, Sausage Gravy Biscuit. You have been around forever. An old guard for sure. And my favorite breakfast food would be a sausage gravy biscuit. It is the best. By far. It's great. It's amazing. It's wonderful. I gotta tell you. Oh, man, I'm telling you. I get no respect around here. I'm telling you. Oh, man, I'm telling you. When I wake up in the morning, what in the world do I get? Sausage gravy biscuit, but it's not coming into the front end. Oh, no, it's going out the back end. Oh, man, I'm telling you. It's rough, real rough. Oh, man. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope I addressed that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And our next one goes to Macy, who puts in a $10 super chat and says, for the Ricola Fund, I miss the Ukrainian farmers' tractors hauling tanks. Bring them back, LOL, and Slav Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support. I missed that too. Sadly, that was just kind of like an early war crazy thing that happened. It'll be a thing they recount in history, though. This will be one of those like odd facts about the Ukraine war. But I wish they were back. Sadly, they probably never will be because the front lines have just solidified too well for that kind of stuff to happen. But I liked it when it did. It was funny. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope I addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And I'm telling you what, they need to bring back those tractors hauling tanks. I tell you, wow.
I gotta tell you, those tractors hauling tanks, that was something, really something. I've gotta tell you, you know what else is something? The absolute bakery I have. It's an absolute dump truck. Have you ever seen it?
You talking about the real guy?
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's huge. Believe me, it's bigger than Inneman's Bakery. It's bigger than Nabisco that moved to Mexico. I'm telling you, I put the thick in the milkshakes. I'm telling you what. Let me show you. Thick Donald.
It's 2 C's. It's not CK.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. I gotta go change that real quick. Thick with 2 C's. Wait, hang on. Let me go over here and let me get the picture real quick. I gotta get the right one. Oh, here we go. It's the Thick Donald. Oh, yeah, baby. Here we go. That's the Thick Donald right there. He's got the,
oh, my gosh.
He's got the whole thing out there. It's just a whole bakery. It's nice. It's great.
Like get it off the screen. Get it off.
In other words.
Oh, off the screen.
In other words, it's thick.
Oh, man. We've scarred everyone now. But with that, thank you.
Thank you so much once again for the support. It's absolutely huge, believe me. But it's not as big as my fat ass. But thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. Because without folks like you, this wouldn't be possible. And so with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $7 super chat from White Lightning 777, who says, will Ukraine just be getting F-16s, or will other Western fighters be sent? Having one kind of plane would simplify things.
I have a feeling that multiple fighters will be sent. It will overcomplicate things, but it would far simplify it if just the F-16s were sent. I would agree with you. But there may be multiple kinds, because they said it was including F-16s, but it wasn't only F-16s. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
And up next, we have a $7 super chat from Nigel Curtis, who says, what happens when all these weaponized drones are controlled by computer and program instead of a human? Massive problem.
I would say they're probably always going to be controlled by humans, at least for the next few decades. I would see it being the case. Honestly, I would never see people not being involved in war. Like, there would have to be physical people there in one form or another, at least in my opinion, for it to actually be a war. Otherwise, there isn't really anything at risk. Well, hell, I mean, honestly, that's probably the way we would want it. But still, with that, I hope that does address that, at least in my opinion, fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And also, by the way, the F-14 Tomcat won over the Leopard 2, if you're wondering.
I've got to tell you, American airplanes win over German tanks every time, even in the World Wars. 2 World War winners. It's absolutely great. D.L. Hemingway said, was the enforcer doing the Orange Man? Yes, I was. It was great. It was absolutely huge, but it could be better. We're trying to work on fixing this voice because for some reason I lost it a little while ago, and it's kind of coming back a little bit, but it's not coming back like the industries that we lost to China and Mexico.
What happened? America can be described in one word. And so
I was in the foothills.
I was in the foothills of the Himalayas with Xi Jinping, but with that, we're on to
Doing
the
what though?
I was up there snorting that fine Himalayan blow. but with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $12 super chat from Bob Anon, who says, "Have you guys heard of the Australian Don Small Goods Company? They had a fairly silly TV commercial with the tagline, 'Is done, is good.' Apparently, he sells pork products too."
Really?
That's not the Don we're talking about.
Don, that's not the Don. I'm talking about the Don. And I thank you so much for the support, the Don. It helping the channel to keep on running a Don. And I'll try and look at that a little later, Don. Most likely after stream, a Don. And so with that, I thank you once again for the support, Don. And we're on to the next one, Don.
And the next one is a $20 super chat from Zero J Kwan. And thank you very much for the support. He says, "Not sure if anyone asked this, but if NATO and US gives Ukraine F-16 and tanks, aren't we pushing Putin over the edge to use nuke? And keep up the good work."
And thank you so much for the support, Zero J Kwan. And I would say probably not. It's another one of those fake red lines that they laid out. The Russians really don't have a real red line except for Sevastopol, most likely. So we're just continuously, slowly pushing our way over these red lines and finding out that the threats were fake. That's really what we're finding out. I don't think it will increase the use of nukes because they haven't even really said anything about this news yet, at least officially. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Zero J Kwan. I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you for appreciating this channel enough to find it worthwhile to support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one we have is a $5 super chat from Mark, Colonel of the LSA, who says, "Bing bang, back at you, PsyOps. This is for the coyotes."
Bing, bing, bong, bong. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the support of the channel to keep on running. That was another great moment. But still, thank you so much once again. And I guess that's getting him back for the coyotes. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Stray Cat 241. He puts in a $5 super chat and says, "I got leaf springs on my trucks. Cheers from SoCal, and pick a question from the live, please."
And thank you so much for the support. You got leaf strings on that truck. You got that thing on them. And we'll make sure to get that live chat as well. And thank you once again.
And the live chat question is going to go to, let's see here. It's going to go to Casey, who says, "Did you see Sweden have been secretly training Ukrainian soldiers on Leopard 2, CV-90, and Archers? Now they're heading home."
It's, let's see. What? Hang on. Wait a minute, man. Did you see that? Oh, they're gone.
I saw it.
I think your one-sided politics suck. Well, I think you're
I think he's goofy.
I think he's goofy. We literally just made fun of both of them. How in the hell is that one-sided? We just made fun of both of them. And we're about to make fun of the third one, too, which is your goofy ass. But anyways.
Damn.
But anyway.
The Enforcer is destroying.
Oh my god, he's going off. He's going off. But anyways, it hasn't been secret, actually. We didn't know that they were training them on the Archers and the CV-90s. They may have also been training them on their Sturv 122s, which were their version of the Leopard 2. But, you know, it is interesting to hear that they have been training them. Hopefully they come back to Ukraine and they do quite well. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one. Thank you once again.
All right, and the next one goes to Sick Lid, who puts in a 5 and says, "Artillery barrels are split on purpose to disable equipment you are leaving behind. The German army often did this in World War I."
And I thank you for the support. And that is true. They did do that at least a little in the First World War, especially with the tanks that they had. They didn't want them to fall into Allied hands. They only had 20 of them, but they would blow them up. Blow them up! But still, thank you so much once again for support and sharing that with us. And I think they'll most likely be doing that as well, at least in practice. So with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And the next one is going to go to CK Bold, who puts in a $5 super chat and says to take a live chat question. And thank you, CK Bold, for the support. And his live chat question is going to go to C-Fay, who says, "What defense does the F-16s carry to protect themselves from missiles that the Ukrainian planes do not have?"
Can you reread that one again?
What defense does the F-16s carry to protect themselves from missiles that the Ukrainian planes don't have?
I wouldn't know. Chaff and flares, I would suppose, and that would be about it. For some reason, I'm not really understanding that question, but I think that would probably be my best answer to it. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on rolling.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Psyops once again, who says, Enforcer Matt, question for the live chat, is this stream political? Do you ever make your personal political opinions public?
And I thank you for the support, Sipes. Another questionnaire. This stream is not political. We avoid politics with a passion. Really anyone's politics, but specifically America's politics, because it's about the most hostile that it gets. So we avoid politics. We don't really allow folks to discuss it in the live chat, because people who do that usually use the Ukraine war and everyone who's died in it as a stepping stool to get up onto a soapbox to make a speech about their domestic politics are so right and everyone else's is so wrong. And that makes no sense, especially considering that this is a foreign affair, and then they use that to talk about completely domestic affairs. We also never make our personal political opinions public, and we never will. I think that is a integral part of talking about the news, is not letting people know what you think politically. I don't think it should ever be reflected in the news that we cover what we think politically. The only thing that we let y'all know that we clearly think is that we support Ukraine, and that's it. Anything beyond that, that's really for y'all to fill in the gaps about what y'all believe beyond supporting Ukraine. You know, whether you are, in America for something or against something, or whether you're in a foreign country and you're for something or against something, that's entirely up to y'all. We don't try and tell y'all what to think, and I don't allow people in the live chat to try and tell others what to think either. And honestly, I think that's the way it should be with news. And so with that, I hope that does answer that fairly well. And thank you once again for the support, Sipes, and helping this thing to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Nubbing Flubbing Cat, who puts in a 5 and says, "You are my favorite YouTube channel. Thanks for all the awesome content and coverage, and thanks to the US for helping us in Europe. And cheers from Sweden."
And hello to Sweden, and thank you so much for the support. And thank you for enjoying the support that the United States has given to Ukraine. They have given a good deal, and it's great to know that Europe and the United States stands in the same footing as far as it comes to supporting Ukraine in this war. Hopefully, everyone can work towards sending even more support to Ukraine, so that way they can come out even better at the end of the day. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And thank you so much for the high praise as well, and saying this is your favorite channel. That's really... I'm really blown away, and I got to thank you so much for those kind words. And with that, thank you so much once again. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, shout out to Norwegian Dude for putting in a 20 NOK. I believe that was a Norwegian
kroner.
Kroner.
Crank. man, that's 5 cranks and a yoinky sploinky.
I can't ever get that straight with the currencies, but thank you, Norwegian Dude, for the support very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
Well, I gotta thank you for those cranks, and I'll make sure to exchange you one yoinky sploinky for those 5 cranks. And with that, thank you so much once again, Norwegian Dude, for the support and helping this thing to keep on rolling. And I hope we address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And he puts in another super chat. This one is a 50 NOK, and says, check out the Wiesel AWC. What do you think about the German volunteers stating the Wiesel would be more useful than the Leopard?
I'm gonna have to be honest. I doubt it. This is a tankette. It only has a crew of 2, and at best it has a tow launcher on top of it, a 20mm autocannon, or I think or it's just like a tankette with a machine gun, I think, on top of it. These things would not be as effective as a Leopard 2. I could just tell you that outright. It wouldn't be effective as anything else, really. Yes, it's small. Yes, it's maneuverable, but I just can't see these things being useful. And I believe, if I'm correct, these things have been phased out of German service. And let me see if they have been. Let's see here. Weasel has been used. Several Bundeswehr missions abroad. The Weasel 2 entered service in 2001. So apparently it is still in service, actually, but it appears to have entered a purely AA form, at least from what we can see. But But I would be honest with you, I'm not really expecting this thing to do as well as a Leopard 2. I think that may actually be something of a joke from these people, because there's no way that this thing would be as good. But with that, I thank you so much for the support, and hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And before we move on to the next one, I saw Matthew say it, magna cum laude. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
Somebody said something about somebody making a comment saying that we're too stupid to comment on politics. I was telling them, literally, my degree is in political science, graduated magna cum laude, so that's why I don't put any stock into it.
And my degree...
And nothing more to even be said about that on my part. But Enforcer, what say you?
And my degree is a bachelor's in history, so I don't know why people always love to come in and tell me I'm wrong on history. It's like, if that's the one thing I would know, it would be what my degree was in. You know, I mean, like, I don't know why people, you know, there's so many experts on the internet that have imaginary doctorates. It's unbelievable. But anyways,
don't make me flex my paper.
Dude, whip out that paper. Matthew blank magna cum laude. Andrew blank magna cum laude.
4 years I waited for somebody to say in the most dull tone ever, magna cum laude.
No, Matthew, let me get it down just right. I'm sorry.
Make sure you don't say the whole name.
This might be loud, y'all, but I gotta get close to the mic to do it just like this guy did it. Matthew Enforcer, magna cum laude. Andrew Enforcer, magna cum laude. And I said, I spent $40,000 for this. I was like,
like what's his name? George's dad on Seinfeld.
Yeah.
What is this?
I didn't grow up my son to be like this. What does that mean? What the hell do you think it means? But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $5 super chat from Russ Rizzo, who says, I bought a new Japanese car. I turn on the radio and I don't understand a word they're saying. Rodney.
Oh man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. I get no respect. Not even my radio gives me respect. Oh man, I turn on the radio. I don't even understand what they're saying over there. Oh man, I'm telling you. They're talking about some guy with fish eyes driving a white sedan down the street. I'm telling you, I didn't kill my wife. Oh man, the glove doesn't fit. Oh man, I'm telling you.
I don't even know why I went there, but anyways, with that, thank you for the support. And just to add icing to the cake, magna cum laude. And so with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Slava Something, Silk Lord of the LSA, who says, Enforcer, let's see here. Enforcer puts the fundraiser money in a black bag and hides it all in a bunker, says Slava Something. He spends the daytime hours standing guard over it, holding a club.
Luckily, it's not that difficult. I think you really support Slava Something. But YouTube is actually the one who keeps a close watch on it. And also, I saw someone earlier, and I was waiting for a good moment to address that. Someone said, do you think he was maybe joking? I don't care if someone is joking about that or not. To even insinuate that after we go out of our way to outline how transparent we are about that, that's not a joke to me. That is,
he wasn't joking,
and that is purely offensive to me as well, even if it is a joke. And I usually let jokes slide as far as people want to take them. But once you start insinuating something like we're stealing money that we physically can't even steal, and that is also something that is straight up slander, libel, everything else in between, I don't take that as a joke, because that would be like me just, you know, throwing out as a joke, hey, someone is a child, you know, violator. That's not a joke. You know, no matter how you try and put that, that's not a joke. That's just raw offensive. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well as well. And thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have two super chats from Super Nullish, who puts in two $5 donations. And thank you very much for the support. They said, unreal that Ruski's passed 200,000 KIA, average per day overall at this very moment, 448, but increasing quite fast because, as all we know, the average during the last 7 months have been in the 600 to 800 on average. Man, this whole war is truly a human tragedy. SMH, shaking my head.
And thank you for the support, and I'd agree, it is a tragedy. But unfortunately, and I always have to say this, I know what you mean. But to people who always want to say it's a tragedy and so it must end, it's a tragedy that started and it's got to be finished out to the end now. We've got to try and make sure that while it's a tragedy, we have at least a decent outcome to this whole thing. And so hopefully we can continue to support Ukraine and help them to keep rolling until the end of the war when they win. And with that, I thank you so much once again for support. Hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $4 super chat from Slava Something of the LSA, who says, "First of the night, you are all slow. And Enforcer Matt, give your best evil laughs. Muhaha."
Matthew, what the hell? I was like, Alexa,
no, I read it
or
off the
something.
super chat.
Oh, you sat there and went, "Muhaha." Alexa, give me an evil laugh. Muhaha. Now we have an additional item in the cart for $19.99. Would you like to buy now? No, buying now. It's like...
No, you're thinking about Mark Zuckerberg.
I'm just smoking.
Would you like to see in the meta? Would you like the metaverse?
Yeah, we finally added legs in the meta. Well, guess what, pal? VR chat's had that for 5 years, man. Grow up.
That's a community guideline strike. Would you like to fight me in jujitsu in real life or in the meta?
Just smoke them meats, man. But anyways, with that, thank you once again for support. I hope we addressed that fairly well. With that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Dupper Bob, who says, "Good to see you all." And it's good to see you too, Dupper.
It's good to see you too, Dupper, and thank you so much for the consistent support. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we have a $2 super chat from Destantra, who says, "Thanks for the fun as always." On something. I'm not sure about that last part. It scared me a little bit.
And thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for enjoying it enough to find it worthwhile supporting. I thank you so much for appreciating us enough to find that we are a channel worth supporting. And thank you so much once again. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and we're in our live chat questions. And first up, before the Enforcer says how many we're going to take, we're going to go over the Morse code of the stream. Solved by Mark Hodges, Cife, JP's Gone Fishing, Cliff Simonson, Earl Bernew, and Paul Schultz. Tonight's Morse code dispatch, quote unquote, "I ran out of Morse code messages tonight, so this is the best I could do. Oh, hello there."
Oh, hello there. That's the sound of money, and y'all got that right on the nail. That was the Morse code message. I ran out of things to put into it, so I just put that as the Morse code message, and y'all got it right. And so congratulations on getting that correct again. And with that, we are now going to be moving on into live chat. Sadly, we have gone well over time tonight. There was a unbelievably large amount of super chats tonight, and it took us, according to my numbers, a whole hour and a half to answer all of them. So unfortunately, we won't be able to answer a lot of live chats. We'll take 5 of them because we don't want this thing to stretch on all the way till 1 in the morning, because I have to get up tomorrow and probably run to the store to go get coffee and also make a video and a million other things tomorrow. We also have to get ready for something else behind the scenes. So unfortunately, we'll only be able to take 5. And so with that, we are on to the first one.
And the first one goes to James Bond, who says, "At this rate of fire, who will run out of missiles first, Patriot or Kinzhal?"
Most likely the Kinzhals, because the Kinzhals there's only 80 of. The Ukrainians most likely have more than 100 Patriot missiles at any given location. Well, not at any given location, but across the country. And so with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
The next one is from Candy Nose, who says, "Is Ukraine holding off their counteroffensive until they have F-16s in the country?"
I don't think so. I think they're just holding off their offensive until the conditions on the ground improve, because it is wet and soggy right now, and they want it to be as dry as possible so the armor can operate well. And so with that, I hope we answer that one, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Alex77, who says, "Was the Ukraine depot hit with uranium shells hit by Russia?"
We don't really know. There's been kind of like rumors that it was, but I haven't really seen any verifiable proof to say whether it was or wasn't. Also, considering that blew up, I believe, in Khmelnytsky, and we know that the Western training grounds the Challenger 2's in are far further west, it would make no sense logistically for the tank's ammo to be well ahead of the tanks on the training grounds in the further east in Ukraine. But that's just my opinion. And so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
All right, and this one goes to Charles Martel, who says, "Which airplane is probably converted to fire the Storm Shadow?"
Most likely the Su-27 or the MiG-29. Actually, no, correction. The Su-24 is most likely the one carrying them. And it does have the hard points that would most likely be possible. It can also carry the weight on any given hard point. So I have a feeling it's most likely their Su-24s that are firing off their Storm Shadows. But that is entirely a guess. I wouldn't really know for certain, but there is a Ukrainian Su-24 just in case you're wondering, what would it be? Maybe this one. So with that, I hope that answers that fairly well. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is the Sunken Grave, who says, why has Russia not liquidated that nutsack yet?
Man, they haven't liquidated that nutsack yet because you and I both know that hitting a nutsack hurts. And it'll probably hurt for them. That's a good pun. And also, it's kind of serious. It would probably hurt for them on the propaganda end, because there's probably a lot of Russians that still idolize that guy and think he's some kind of a legend or a hero or something. And if they kill him, imagine what kind of uproar that would cause in the Russian public. It may not even be quellable. Or it may be that he hasn't really made it himself a target to where he can be had yet, because he's hanging out so close to the front lines all the time. And he's not really leaving them except for very short moments, and he doesn't go that far into Russia when he does. So with that, I hope that does answer that question fairly well, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. And, dang, man. Damn, son. You just scared the hell out of me. But that is the end of tonight's stream. I thank you all so much once again for watching. And if y'all did enjoy, make sure to subscribe, make sure to like, and make sure to comment, while Kilo Charlie throws in a $10 super chat saying, ZNPP. Existential threat or no? I would say, to answer that one as quick as I can, probably not, because the Ukrainians will probably get control of it before anything bad happens, and it also seems that nothing bad has happened yet, at least now. And so thank you so much for that support, and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We run this stream 6 days a week, except for Mondays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, covering the past 4 hours of the war in Ukraine, and we also run Sunday fundraisers, and we are right now, I think, around $955,000, so we're getting very close to $1 million raised in support of Ukraine. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. I'll see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours in the news of the war in Ukraine. Good night, good luck, stay safe, take care, long live the LSA, and Slava Ukraini.
And good night, love Ukraine, and if we're going to pull rank, magna cum laude.
Magna cum laude.
Yes. The Leaf Green Army sends its regards.
Ooh.